Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Glad that you're with us. This is a special meeting of the Gainesville City Commission. The purpose of this meeting is specifically to discuss the Commission's distribution of American Rescue Plan dollars, and so we need a motion to adopt our agenda.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Saka, seconded by Hayes Santos to adopt our agenda. All in favor say aye. All opposed, motion passes unanimously. So it's great to be at this point. I want to start out first and foremost by thanking our Congress and President Biden for taking the much needed and bold action to distribute this money to cities and counties across the country. I will tell you this was a huge effort by both the National League of Cities and the U.S. Conference of Mayors to get direct distribution of money to cities and counties. That was not the case with the CARES Act. In fact, only one city in Florida qualified for CARES funding because it was over 500,000 in population, and that was Jacksonville. And so for cities across the country to get this funding and make determinations as to what the needs of each of our individual communities were was critical, and we're very appreciative for that. The purpose, of course, of the American Rescue Plan Act was to help cities and counties and states to address the challenges that our neighbors faced as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so the legislation was passed, and then it went to the Treasury Department for the rules to be developed that very clearly defined what this money could and could not be used for. It really falls into four major buckets with 70 sort of subcategories that determine what the allowable uses were. And so we've gone through a pretty extensive process, first by soliciting input from the city commissioners and myself. We went through a pretty extensive public participation process as well. I think more so than any of our other local governments in the area to see what the needs were, as well as who would be able to meet those needs, whether it was nonprofit sector or partnering with other government agencies. And then our staff, really spearheaded by our Director of Equity and Inclusion, Zariah Folston, led an effort to bring all that together, sort of highlight where the common themes were, both from your elected officials as well as the public participation. And that brings us to this point today. And so there is a recommended allocation. We won't necessarily get into the finer details of that. But I will say that, in looking at all of the input, it was pretty clear that the few major categories emerged as priorities for both the public and the City Commission. And so a lot of those priorities centered around housing, housing stabilization, homelessness prevention, helping families with energy efficiency and utilities assistance. Broadband, we certainly learned in the pandemic the divide between people that had access to quality broadband and not just for our students trying to keep up with their schooling at home, but people trying to work from home. Gun violence, and then a couple priorities that the Commission has been working on that really dovetail with this, which is the East Side Medical Clinic, the East Side Grocery Store, and what traditionally called a transfer station, what we call a mobility hub in East Gainesville as well. We also have set aside for nonprofits to apply for funding through this, through a grant process. That is one thing the Commission will definitely need to discuss, how we expect that process to take place, and be very clear with our nonprofit agencies on how they can apply for that money and participate as well. And then one thing I'm going to ask the commission to consider, regardless of the amounts or categories of funding that we ultimately approve today, is that we direct staff to include language inclusion with all of these projects. So whether it's doing outreach for utility assistance or housing stabilization or medical assistance, gun violence prevention, that we make sure that we're putting in front of that the ability for our non-native English speakers who comprise significant populations of our neighborhoods are able to access those programs and fully participate. And so I think that's one way that we can ensure that we're doing that through these different priorities. Let me just, for folks that are watching, well, never mind. I know that Mr. Folson's going to go over this, and the city manager and the rest of our staff is also available for questions. And so, Mr. Folson, why don't I turn it over to you, and you can sort of present where we are, what the recommendations are, and then I think also making sure to address what it is we need to accomplish today, specifically in giving staff the direction they need to move forward with getting this money distributed.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for this opportunity again. Thank you Thank you to the city manager, all the charters for their assistance and help, and all of their respective staff. Thank you to the staff in the Office of Equity and Inclusion as well for their support.
One sec, Mr. Folson. Whoever's working the phones, there's a line that's not being muted right now. If you want to just check that. Sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
Nope. So just thank everybody for the support, and even the nonprofits that have reached out that I've had a chance to talk to during this process. So today we're here as a result of your motion from the last meeting. The city manager and his staff took direction from the last meeting to be able to provide the buckets necessary for us to be able to bring back today for you guys to have a general idea of how you should allocate ARP dollars. Again, this is just a guide, a recommendation that you guys are more than willing and welcome, and we do expect for you to make changes to it to some degree. And then secondly, the direction is for the charters to collectively convene to be able to break those recommendations. We've done that. And then thirdly, the charters to propose a methodology of how the community partners could access the ARP funds, and then also at this meeting itself. So a couple of things that I would like for us to do today, one of which I want to start off by saying thank you. I have nonprofits, NGOs, if you will, that understand that this process that's being afforded to them is not being afforded to them in other communities. And so they are appreciative to this board for even taking this on to say, hey, you know what? It may be a challenge. It may require more time, more meetings, but we want to get this thing right, and we want to give an opportunity to our local nonprofits to participate, and we want to show them our appreciation by supporting them meet our most vulnerable needs in our community. So thank you on behalf of those nonprofits for even doing this, because there are a lot of communities that aren't doing this process. As well as today, two of the things that we want to be able to do is determine, number one, what is going to be the funding allocation for the nonprofit community. As you can see in your backup, the recommendations from the charter group was $2 million, $1 million for each year. In the event that you want to go higher or lower for some reason than what is printed, we would like to get direction on hardcore what that number is. That way they have an expectation, and we have an expectation of how many nonprofits we're possibly talking about and considering. The second thing we would like for you to do today is have a discussion around process, not as much about criteria and things of that nature. We can bring you back that. A lot of other communities have done what we're doing, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel in that regard. But what we would like to know is direction in terms of that process, in terms of forming a committee or however you guys recommend for us to be able to give this money out to the public. Who's ultimately going to make the decisions in terms of how this money gets spent. That way we know how to proceed, whether that be us create a committee that's going to go through and rank them and present them to you as recommendations, or some other method that you guys deem necessary. But we want direction primarily in those two areas. Thirdly, it would be my recommendation that you guys as a commission have an opportunity to meet with each other to figure out what you want to do as a commission in terms of your pot of money. But today is, for me, it's not about what commissioners want to do per se with that or those other dollars. It's about us today figuring out what we want to do for our neighbors in terms of our nonprofit organizations and setting that number so they have an expectation. As we move forward through the process, some things that we're going to do at the direction from you guys today, one of which hopefully is to bring back an application process for you to consider with criteria already in there. How are we going to evaluate those nonprofits and what are the things that they're going to need to submit? You'll know whether or not we're talking about 501c3s, 50C19s, whatever that thing is. We'll bring all of that back to you. That's not something that you guys need to discuss today. We'll bring that back to you at a later meeting. We'll also, just so you know, once we've decided on that application, we would have either some form of community engagement with our nonprofit community to allow them to come in to answer us questions, whether that be a webinar, whether that be in person, to be able to ask us all the questions that they want to ask us in terms of what are the criteria, what is the criteria from us as the city, do they have a bank account, are they aware of any of the other criteria that we'll put in place. We'll have a meeting with them to be able to express that, and then after that meeting will be a period of time where they can engage us again, staff, myself, whomever, to say, okay, I had questions from the meeting on this aspect of it, or I know you guys talked about this aspect, but I think you probably should consider this because this may be a little bit better for us. We want to give time so we can work through those with our community neighbors as well. Then at that point, we'll submit the application out or open it out to the community. They'll have an opportunity to apply within a certain window of time, and then we'll come back to you with those recommendations based on the direction you give today, meaning whether or not that's going to come through a separate committee that's going to evaluate them and rank them, or whether or not we're going to just bring that back to the full body, or whatever you guys decide to do as that mechanism today. So today's conversation for me is twofold. Again, and lastly, these are my concluding comments. Unless the manager wants to share, it's just twofold. What is the number that we can all depend on that's going to be there at a minimum for our nonprofits? And then secondly, what is that process in terms of how the evaluation tool is done in terms of, are you guys going to sit as a committee or are we going to select a committee? How would that process work? Those are the two things for us today.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Fulton. Ms. Feldman, do you have anything to add?
The only thing I would add is, so you have a matrix that has been recommended by the charters jointly. To the extent that you agree or not agree and want to amend it, our intention is to come back within 30 to 45 days with actual plans on how to implement these various programs for the commission's approval.
Okay, thank you. And that's an important point. For example, and I'm not pitching anything here, but let's say the commission approves $1 million for energy efficiency upgrades. Well, the city's not going to perform those energy efficiency upgrades. We're going to contract with somebody to do that, which could be a nonprofit. It could be something else entirely. So I think that's the work that needs to be done. Once we establish how much funding will go in certain areas, then our staff will go and figure out how to implement that funding and bring that back to plan for final approval. All that to say that many of those dollars could still funnel through nonprofits to do the work because the city just doesn't have the resources or staffing to do a lot of that. Finally, the city manager did send out a note, I think, informing us that through our home funding from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, we got an additional $2 million for housing stabilization. That's in addition to the ARP money, and that gave me a great sense of relief because, that allows a little more flexibility, I think, with what we have out here, and we just have to figure out how we're going to make sure that we get that money spent and working for our community. So that's a separate discussion. We have it, right, Mr. Murray? We qualify for it. we're good. That's not going anywhere. And so that's above and beyond the $32 million from the ARP. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and get some thoughts from the members of the commission, and then we'll open it up for public comment as well. Commissioner Santos.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you everyone who's put the work into this. I think the list we have in front of us addresses issues that were highlighted even in COVID, and I think we see both short-term solutions because some of these are problems that can't be solved tomorrow.
Sorry, can I interrupt real quick? Either Madam Clerk or Mr. Folson, if we can
Yes.
put it under the dot cam, can we put that list up so people can see it while we're talking?
Yes, they have it. They're going to put it up.
Okay, great. Thank
Yeah,
you. I'm
yeah.
sorry. Go ahead.
So I think the issues that were brought up during COVID, that were highlighted more in COVID, they were there already. I think the list we have with us both provides short-term solutions to those issues and also long-term issues. We're gonna use a document.
The clerk has it.
I think
Yep,
that's,
the clerk has it. Yep.
here, why don't you just,
She's going to share it.
why don't you just put it on the document
Okay.
real quick.
Okay, we have it at the dot cam. I think he went back to the clerk's office. to get it.
1 minute, Mr. Mayor.
There you go.
Yeah, okay, we're good. We're good. It's showing.
So I believe this, sorry for repeating myself, addresses both our short-term issues and long-term issues that we have in our community. And because a lot of these are long-term things that can't be solved tomorrow, but they are issues that we have to address that were brought up during COVID. So I believe I'm supportive of staff's recommendations. I think we allocate the buckets today, and then staff comes back and brings forward how we can how we implement these different programs, and then also brings back kind of recommendations for the nonprofits and where those might be spent, have those come back to the commission. I think that would be the best forward. So I just kind of get it started. I don't know. I'd like to move that we adopt staff
Can we
recommendations.
hold off on a
Sure.
motion? Thanks. I really do want to hear from everybody first. Although I do agree with your sentiments. Commissioner Ariola?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I will find myself with a different perspective. I think that we need a lot more special meetings like this for the commission to discuss our different priorities. That's not to say that the list in front of us doesn't have things that are worth funding. It's just that a bit of advice I once got from a professor was always question numbers that end with more than few zeros. And that's because I think we need to be a lot more critical about how much money we're allocating for some of these things before we just put them into pots. So I really think that this should be one of the items that we meet regularly to discuss, because I would like to hear each commissioner talk about their individual priorities. I saw some very interesting concepts and ideas that the mayor and the commission put forward. But we haven't really had a chance to talk about those in depth. I certainly have projects that I would like to suggest, and so I think that it's really, really early to say let's approve this in front of us. I just think that, and as I was looking at our matrix, I was highlighting the concepts and proposals that received at least 3 or 4 sort of proposals from the commission, and we may not have the same amounts, but things like utility debt forgiveness, that was something that the commission by and large saw fit to fund. Nonprofit assistance was definitely one of them. CRP program expansion, funding for an Eastside Medical Center, housing stabilization, which I'm with you, Mr. Mayor. That extra grant was a huge boost for our progress. Broadband was also listed on that, and youth job training of some type, because I think that is something that we can directly begin to work towards. So I'd like to address what Mr. Folston asked us to come to agreement on, which is how much we want to allocate for NGOs. I was really impressed with all of the NGO submissions. It is very difficult to have to only be able to fund some of them because we received $19 million in proposals. So what I would like for us to do is to provide for both year one and year two, 25% of our funding would go to NGOs, which if you shake out the math, it comes out to about $4 million a year. And I would also like for us to be able to, when we have those special meetings, to have discussions on, to allow for the NGOs to have the opportunity to make presentations to the commission so that we can ask questions about it and figure out what projects fit the goals that we're looking for. And just to wrap up my comments, I would like for us to engage the school board and Alachua County to discuss their sort of strategic planning for the use of their American Rescue Plan Act dollars. We can engage the University of Florida as well, because I do believe the state did allocate them some, but I understand that they have a different mission, and so it would be worth it to reach out to them to see where we can overlap our missions. But I think that's where we can utilize the most. I think the most valuable thing that President Biden gave us wasn't the money. The money is not the most valuable thing President Biden gave us. The most valuable thing he gave us was time to make these decisions. We don't have to rush into them. We don't have to spend them immediately. We've got 3 years to really think about how we want this money to get spent. And so it's only been a handful of months. And so I think that we really need to take a breath and just really, really think through these decisions and discuss them. So I will not be in support of any motion to support the ledger in front of us, but I would like for us to continue discussing what decisions we could make today short of that. Thank you.
Commissioner Duncan-Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Commissioner Ariola. I do ditto many of your sentiments. Right off the top, in taking a look at the matrix that's in front of me, one of the things that was a little surprising to me was that I noticed that I have at least one thing that I submitted that did get put through the equity tool and received a rating of good the first time out the gate that simply does not appear on the matrix. So that is something that I definitely want to make sure that I get a greater grasp on. But beyond that, and before I even deal with that issue or hear from the city manager on that, there are a few other items here on this list that I do believe we need to have more discussion on based on motions that were made. Number one, at that city joint and county meeting with regards to the UF clinic, there was a motion that we ended that meeting on, but yet I see that we at least have some desire to make a decision on that item today, and I don't believe that that's the direction that we should be headed in, given that we have not addressed that motion. Also with the East Side Grocery Store and the East Side Motility Hub, we've had conversations around that about the fact that there are available funds that had already been allocated to be used out of the GCRA fund. So at the end of the day, I think that we have a lot of room for robust conversation, around what it is we want to fund. I look forward to talking to you, my colleagues, about some of the wonderful ideas that exist here. But I also know that we definitely need to grapple with some of the issues that exist amongst the current things on the matrix. Before I arrived here at this commission, there was much discussion about the broadband issue. And so I have several questions around that. I know that there was a several-part motion that I had read about. I'm not sure how that all shook out, but I certainly would like to hear if that motion was ever actually moved on, or what actually happened in terms of that conversation and where we now stand with that, because that is a very heavy lift that requires some serious infrastructure, and we need to be very, very mindful about how or if we choose to allocate funds towards that. So I would also like to say that I look forward to at least one workshop that ideally would include our new interim city manager as well, since she'll be here throughout this process. I don't believe that we can afford to leave her out of this. Shepherding these programs as they move forward would be something that I think we should give her the opportunity to be on the front end as opposed to having to inherit something that we began without her. So those are my comments for this point, and I thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the charters for all the work that you all have put in on this. Staff has many, many hours of work behind what you see before you, as do we all. We've been, I know my first set of proposals went in back in June, and I know many other commissioners did also. There have been a lot of ideas that have come forth from the community, some of which have been sitting on our desks since May or June, and some of which are relatively new. Some are proven programs that we know work and that we know meet needs that are desperate in our community right now, and some of which are really cool ideas that I think will work going forward. I'm of many minds with what's in front of us, but as we all are, there are some things that there is tremendous agreement on, it appears, that we from the beginning have all said, yes, this project makes sense, let's do this. Things like home efficiency upgrades. Many of us have said that that's a thing that we ought to do. I think we ought to, despite shaking heads up and down and back and forth, these are things that we have largely agreed to do. They meet several needs in the community, including lowering people's utility bills who most need that. At the same time, it helps with conservation. Both those things are extremely useful and things that need to happen in our community and in many communities. Items like that we already have broad agreement on, I would like to see us not kick forward months and months and months. Things that, for instance, I would like to see us agree on the amount that we want to budget to nonprofits and then work through a process over the weeks and months to fill those to choose those nonprofits. But I don't want to make people wait forever for things that we know we're going to do. If the votes are already there, we should go ahead and allocate money. We should move forward with the things that we know we're going to do. We've had this money since July, I believe, part of the money. The president and the Congress agreed to do this for it to be used. It is a tremendous opportunity for us to meet needs we otherwise couldn't meet in our community, in every community around the country. And that's exciting, and I want us to take our time with many of these things. Some of them, however, if we know that we already agree, we should move forward and fund them and start helping people and put the help where it needs to be rather than waiting until we agree on every single thing. That's my hope for today. And I will tell you that as far as nonprofit grants go, I love the idea of $8 million. I'd always prefer to see more going out to nonprofits. What I had been thinking, including the additional $2 million that we were notified of yesterday evening, I was thinking about a $6 million pot split into two pieces. One, about a $2 million pot, as you see here, for new ideas, things that we had not worked on before, and one of about $4 million that would fund organizations that we have worked with in the past and that other government organizations work with. In other words, folks that we know have reporting capabilities and the ability to move forward quickly with serving needs. So there's kind of an opportunity system as well as a proven nonprofit system that I'm thinking about there. And I certainly don't have a motion ready, even if we were ready for one. But I do want to hear what everybody else has to say, and hopefully get some money allocated today. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sacco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you everyone who worked on this. Commissioner Ward just said, it's been months of working, but I will agree with the point that, you know, if there are certain projects or services that we all agree, like we don't even have to talk about it, we all know that's the right thing to do with a certain amount of funds, we shouldn't delay those or tie it up with red tape. I will agree with Commissioner Duncan Walker on one thing, and Commissioner Arroyo. There were a couple of projects that we put forward that were rated good, that were rated either good or the majority of us agreed, maybe not on funding, but that was definitely the direction to go on some of those, and I don't see those. And then I see some that I don't think we ever talked about that made it on the list. And that's not to say that they're not good, it's just that we might not know what, because the matrix says like 2-3 words. It doesn't tell us what actually goes into the breakdown of some of those. So I know we had this conversation yesterday, the gun violence initiatives. I don't know what that initiative and that money addresses. So it's hard for me to say like, yeah, that's fine to put $1 million on that, because I don't know what that line would actually do. But then I see things like, Commissioner Arello's point to job training for youth, and that was also something that came up yesterday. What are our youth doing? How are we engaging our youth, making sure that they have the ability to move forward with education or job training, to get skills that help them move forward and have job security in the future, which was another COVID issue. Do you have job security? Do people lose their jobs? What can you do? On the matter of nonprofit funding, I think personally, it's a lot of issues. On the one hand, there are some things, a lot of things fall under nonprofit. So homeless outreach falls under nonprofit, but it's separate here. There are other substantial nonprofit proposals and projects that we had, like mental health. I don't see it anywhere on here, and I think the majority of us were pretty strong proponents of that the first couple times we talked about it. And that's not covered under, the clinic building or anything. It's kind of just lacking there. So those are issues of concern where we had a couple of things that we all really supported, but we don't have them here. The number that does really draw my attention, however, is the energy rehabilitation for low and moderate income housing. You can go back, there's years of tape of me saying we need to make homes more energy efficient for folks. But I don't think that $6 million was ever really the amount we talked about, especially out of this pot, because I can do math. It's a large fraction of it. I can't do math. It is a substantial amount of the money going only to that. And I did the math. Let's say we do like a 5,000 allowance per house maximum. That reaches 1,100 homes that we could help, which is not insubstantial. But I think the trade-off of, you are in a position of home ownership, so you are already theoretically better positioned than a lot of folks that could be helped with this money. In terms of houselessness, in terms of domestic violence victims, in terms of youth who don't have family or community support that need other skills. So that's a large amount of money, maybe $1 million or $2 million over what I would have expected to put in that bucket. That could definitely help in the nonprofit range of activities, be they what they may. So that's the one I'm kind of curious about, if we could chip away at that one to reallocate. But I also want to know what the gun violence initiative here as presented, what that would cover, if you or Mr. Feldman know.
Mr. Manager?
So with regard to the gun violence on here, that's an example of a program that we would come back and give you more definition on. But some of the programs that the chief outlined yesterday in terms of where we would need overtime dollars, for example, this year we found out that we're not getting funding for our domestic violence victims advocate. So this would replace that funding, and hopefully in the future we would continue to get grants along that line. So there's a number of initiatives, again, that the chief, wants to move forward on, that would not necessarily be continuing costs. And that's another point I want to make, is that when we looked at this, the idea was to provide really one-time expenditures, with the idea that after 2024, there would be no more funding coming from this, and so we didn't want programs to fall off. So this is a very capital, one-time expenditure centric type of program. I do want to just comment on the energy efficiency. We were looking at potential investments on homes of $30,000 to $50,000 per home, recognizing that a lot of leakage ends up out of roofs, out of HVAC systems, and not just really the weather stripping insulation type on there. We'd gone ahead as staff and started looking at GRU energy bills and converting that to a kilowatt per square footage to start determining which homes had the greatest leakage on there, and that was going to be our target. But again, looking at potentially $30,000 to $50,000 worth of renovations on homes to bring them everything from potentially new roofs to LED lighting retrofits to HVAC systems that had the right type of SEER rating, in tidying up the leakage.
Okay. So in that study of seeing which homes had the most leakage, was there any cross-analysis with the rental permit to see? So what I don't want to do is for the city to use this money to fix up a home when the landlord should be fixing it.
Yeah, we only looked at owner occupied
Okay.
properties that were homesteaded. It was our standard for that.
And the 6 million is roughly what you thought you'd need?
Correct. Our target was between 100 and 150 homes.
100 and what?
100 to 150 homes.
So I'm not entirely comfortable with, I understand it would be a substantial change and a substantial benefit to, let's say, 100 families. But that is potentially thousands of people we could help otherwise. And I understand the component of capital projects. I tried to think of capital changes or just one-off changes, but I think when it comes to something like mental health, I was also thinking of transition funding. So it's not a continuous cost, it's not a capital cost, but it's something that we will need in the next couple of years for our city to recover. And I think mental health is one of those, where it's been a rough year and a half for everyone, one way or another. And I think to be able to recuperate as people and as a city, like forget the organization, people, investing in mental health care through a couple of nonprofits, and I think there's like a handful I know. Some nonprofits do it as a component of their services. Some are fully dedicated to that. But I think subsidizing or covering, a short-term escalation of those services, given that there is a much greater need now, and hopefully it will peter off in the coming years with some assistance. I think that is a valuable area that we could fund. And I don't expect us to fund it long-term. And I think one of the applicants for mental health services, I asked them, what's your plan in 3 years? And they said they are growing, and they are getting more and more grants, but they figured this would allow them to serve many more in the short term, given the mental anguish our city has, to be then more self-sufficient and be able to recover. Because having housing and internet and all of this doesn't matter if you are not in a mental state that you can go forward and do something. Like, that doesn't help you. You can't help yourself later. So that's, I would still reassess the home rehabilitation part. Maybe not necessarily, because when I did my math, I was counting like HVAC and some substantial projects. But if the expectation is 100 homes, I think there's a better trade-off somewhere else with that money if we scale it down.
And that's certainly the commission's, policy prerogative and why we put this out there. On there, I do want to comment that, I think Commissioner Ariola, pointed this out in his comments, is that there are other agencies that have received ARPA money. And social services, mental health is still a county function on there, and they did receive $52 million, $20 million in excess of what we did. And so when we looked at the idea of making proposals, it was that we would try to really emphasize the areas where we're operating in our lane and let the county operate within their lane. On there, I do think that as we start talking with the NGOs, not-for-profits on there, that is really an opportunity to collaborate as well. And the idea that as part of an application process, we would ask the not-for-profits to go to the county as well and give really strength where there's collaboration is really something that we ought to consider for moving forward.
I'm not opposed to collaboration. I don't want to make this and be like, oh yeah, they have it. I would like to have those conversations that Commissioner Ariola mentioned, with a commitment to a certain amount of money in these areas, if that is going to be their lane. I just don't want to assume they're doing it and have them assume that we're doing it, and then no one does it. Final comment, and I'll stop because I know I've talked enough. As for the allocation of those nonprofit, of the bucket in general, be it what it may, what amount, from a logistics point, I would rather that we give a certain deference to more established projects. If someone's asking for, I don't know, more than $50,000 for whatever project they're doing, I would rather give deference to more experienced projects or nonprofits that have a history of grant maintenance or management is the better word, who have the experience and the staff to pull off those projects. I don't think, for anything that is substantial amount of money, I don't think this is the pot of money to try to experiment with newly created nonprofits or a nonprofit doing something that's a completely new addition to their mission. I just worry about their ability to pull it off in the time frame that we have, because as much time as we have, it's still limited. And I don't want them to feel pressured or rushed to perfect this, and I don't want to misallocate that money where someone more experienced could have much more easily or readily pulled off a project. That's my only hesitation with funding newer nonprofits or project ideas. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Before I go around a second time, a couple broad thoughts. First of all, this money does absolutely no good in our bank account. I reject the idea that we slow walk this. We need to get this money authorized and in the hands of either our organization or other organizations to start helping people. People have been suffering for almost 2 years now. And for some folks, they have made it through, they've adapted, they're doing fine. For other folks, the folks that were hit the hardest and are still continuing to struggle, they need our help, and they need it now. I feel, I'm frustrated that it's taken us this long I wanted this money out and helping people recover and stabilize months ago. If there are elements that we don't agree on, then we can set aside that amount of funding. I honestly haven't heard any disagreement. I've heard some concern with amounts. And I want to go back to the energy rehabilitation. I tried to. I feel like that's mismanaged. I think that if we refer to this as housing stabilization, whether it's energy efficiency or people are living in unsafe or dangerous housing situations, or we've just got so many people, especially our older population, living on fixed incomes. They can't fix the roof. They can't replace the hole in the window. And that those are folks that need our help. And I want to go back to Commissioner Duncan Walker's question. We did make a motion at the joint city county meeting that we move forward with the Eastside Clinic. I believe it's the county's intention to use ARP funding to do that. I believe it was that was the funding source that I understood we would be using for that. We also, in that motion, and this may be the portion you're referring to, directed our respective staffs to reach out to other healthcare providers to continue a conversation about how they can address some of the health disparities, particularly in East Gainesville. But the motion was to move forward with the clinic that passed unanimously by both. I do have some concerns about the Eastside Grocery and just whether that is going to happen. I still am highly supportive of it, but I've lost confidence that it may actually end up happening, at least under its current proposal. So I do think we need to consider if that important project falls through, what we do with that money. But everything else, on here, I believe we have consensus towards. I am happy to entertain a different number for nonprofit organizations. I would like to be clear where we take that money from out of the other projects. And I guess, well, I'm open to how we address that. But I really hope that by the end of this meeting, we can give some clear direction to staff as to how we move forward with most of this money so we can start helping people. Because again, it doesn't do us a bit of good in our bank account. We're helping absolutely zero individuals if this money is sitting in our account. We need to get it into the hands of individuals and organizations that are going to address the significant challenges that many of our neighbors still face. With that, we'll go back around. Commissioner Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. And I agree that we need to make a decision. We need to allocate the buckets where the money is going and approximately how much we're going to put in there. I think Commissioner Arioli brought up a fair point about something ins and zeros. We don't really know what it's going to real cost is going to be, but we need to allocate. I mean, kind of how we say what buckets we want to do it. We say how much money we want to spend, and then we create the programs that fit that kind of bucket, and we move forward on that. If we try to figure out the exact cost of everything, and now then if we spend a lot of money with something we might not move forward on. So I think that's where we pick where we want to spend the money, and we move forward in that. For the nonprofits, I'm open to increasing the dedicated portion for nonprofits, but there is also, I mean, eviction assistance is going through a nonprofit. The community land trust, that's $1 million, right? Those two together is $1 million. That's $2 million over the 2 years that is going towards nonprofits. Hopeless outreach, and then the set aside directly for that. So for me, I think it's what are the issues that we want to solve, and then we figure out from there who is the best person to do it. Is it a nonprofit is the best entity to carry out solving that issue, or is it us as a government doing that, solving that issue? I think what are the problems we want to address is the main thing that I think we should address. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Ward, Commissioner Ward, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, just so we're clear on this, we're actually working not with 32.4, but with 34.3, with the addition of yesterday's almost $2 million. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. And that doesn't apply to everything. Not all the things on this list would work with that extra $2 million, but that's okay because much of it will. I totally agree that there are folks who are hurting and have been hurting since this started. We shouldn't keep those folks waiting if we don't have to. There's a lot that we still need conversation on. Some of these items are not urgent. Some are urgent. Some are very important and have been waiting a long time, and we need more definition on how they work. For instance, broadband. $9.6 million is a flat number, is a lot of money for something that we don't have a plan yet. A plan is coming. A plan is coming. And it matters to lots of people. But we're not gonna make somebody's life better tomorrow with that money. There are people whose lives we can make better tomorrow with some of the money here. So we should not think about this as an all or nothing project. Either we appropriate the money or we don't. I don't think we should think about it that way. Some of this money needs to get spent. When we talk about the CRA funding specifically, there are 3 projects on here: the Eastside Clinic, the Eastside Grocery Store, and the Eastside Mobility Hub. Each of those could conceivably be paid out of the CRA. But if we do that, that's a full year of CRA funding. 10% of the total of our 10-year CRA project on 3 projects. I don't think I want to do that. I don't think I want to do that. I want those things to happen, but I'd rather do them with money that President Biden brought to us and said, go do other things with your CRA money. That's the way I feel about that one. And it may not happen. I mean, the grocery store, I have my doubts about whether that's going to happen. But if it is going to happen, I'd rather pay for it with this money than by taking CRA money for it. Also, I want to point out that every time we talk about maybe we'll pay for this or for those items particularly from the CRA, maybe we'll pay for them out of this money. What we do is postpone other opportunities for the CRA. And that's been a real thing over the last couple of years. We've done a lot of postponing on ideas for GCRA because there are lots of things that aren't certain. I would rather make that certain and say, if we're going to do those 3 items, those Hawthorne Road items, that we do them from ARP so that our GCRA staff can be working on big ideas at places like 8th and Waldo and other things that they need to be freed up to work on, instead of saying, well, we may have to spend 1 year's funding on these 3 items. So that's just the way I'm thinking about those. I do hope we can allocate money to help people today, and that we can continue to have conversations about many of these things, many workshops going forward. But what we know will help people today and that we can allocate today, we should allocate today and let it get moving. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Duncan Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask Mr. Folson, because clearly we're doing a lot of talking up here. We can't seem to agree just yet. So I'd like to ask you, Mr. Folson, what was your line of thinking and why did you suggest to the commission today that we squarely focus on dealing solely with not-for-profit grants?
Well, really, my intention for saying you guys should focus on allocation for the nonprofits, primarily because each of you have projects that you're passionate about, and we need an opportunity for each of you to be able to share that project and explain it to each other and have that level of dialogue. If you guys decide that today is appropriate for that, you have all the right to do that. But I think the opportunity needs to be given because some of you have very good projects, because I've read through all of them. And I know you would probably like an opportunity to advocate for those with each other. However, it appears that you guys want to do some type of allocation today. You guys can more than freely do that, but keeping in mind that you have colleagues that may want to have some level of interaction. So transparently, that's why I recommended it, because I know each of you have passionate projects that you care about. And then to go to the manager's point, some of these projects and the mayor are going, and really several of you said this, are going to be done through nonprofits. So us just having a conversation about what you want to do and then saying to the manager and staff, hey, listen, how can we make this happen and that happen? So that's where my impetus was, as well as I knew the nonprofit community was going to be here today, and I wanted them to get an understanding of where their number was going to be at, and then for us to have an opportunity as a commission to have the discussions that we may want to have around our projects. No offense to the nonprofits, but not in front of the nonprofits. No offense. I just wanted it to be something today was about them. But I'm open to whatever approach that you guys want to do, because I'm taking frivolous notes, and I will tell you the beauty of all this is several of you are saying the same projects. And when I go back to the matrix, it's the several of you are still with the same projects. And quite honestly, if you guys voted right now, several of the same projects that are on the matrix are going to rise to the top. The issue would be how much you want to fund for them. But in terms of what you guys want to do, I'm taking notes of what you're saying, and I know what you put in your matrix, what you submitted before. I don't see much changing from this group. And for me, that's a good thing, because a lot of the things that you guys have supported are things that are going to help our neighbors and things that can be implemented sooner rather than later. But that decision in terms of when you want to allocate your money is totally up to you. My hope would just be that we can give some guidance to the nonprofits today.
Okay, thank you. I ask that because I tend to be in agreement with that line of thinking. And just as a point of clarification for myself, Mr. Mayor, you had made a comment with regards to the Eastside UF Clinic building and that meeting. I don't recall that being a unanimous decision, because I distinctly remember that I myself was concerned that the process itself was not as inclusive as I had hoped that it would be. And so I was not in agreement with just outright giving the University of Florida $5 million, 2.5 from us, 2.5 from that side, without hearing more proposals from both sides. So I don't remember that to be a unanimous decision from our side. But whatever the case may be, I'm certainly hoping that we can at least have the conversation for our nonprofits who are here today and start making a decision at least about that. We clearly need the opportunity to speak to each other. I think that's the one thing that has become apparent in this entire discussion today, that this opportunity for us to share our thoughts, share our ideas, is something that we really haven't had much time to do. Whether or not we vote on that, it kind of remains to be seen. At some point, I'll probably put the motion on the floor today, but I think this is something that's absolutely necessary. At any rate, I'm looking forward to getting down to the conversation about what's going to happen with our nonprofits in that process moving forward, per the recommendation of staff.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Commissioner Santos?
Thank you, Mayor. And I did want to I got received a message from the county that the county is spending $17 million in emergency rental assistance, and most of that money is going to residents of Gainesville as well. I did want to touch on I guess, do we have another meeting? If we're saying we're not going to discuss the items before us, do we have another meeting scheduled? Because to the mayor's point, I just don't want us to continue to push and push and push. Right. There is a meeting scheduled, or Mr. Boltzmann?
Huh?
There is a meeting scheduled if we're not talking about it today?
No, there can be.
Okay.
We
I
have
can
not,
give-
we have not given direction
Yeah.
to schedule another meeting. We certainly can make that part of our
Yeah.
motion today.
I just don't want us to keep kicking the can down the road because we'll get nothing done. I do want to discuss broadband and the funding in that area. That will have a tremendous impact. That funding right there will provide internet to 10,000 homes and run fiber to their homes. That's a huge number of people, more than any other of the fundings we have up there, a number of people that it would affect. During the joint meeting that I think Commissioner Walker broke up, when we had with the school board and the county commission, where we all voted that we wanted to move forward with connecting every home in our community. I remember the school board superintendent brought up that one of the biggest issues that they had was internet connectivity, both for their teachers, but also for students who couldn't get online. And I think it ties to Commissioner Ariel's point of job training. I mean, there's a lot of job training you can get online for free. Children being able to do their homework instead of having a way to do it. They have to go to the library or just they're not able to do that. And then there's savings too. I mean, it would be about $500 per year per family in savings. That's a huge amount of money that goes into someone's back into their pockets that they can spend on other issues and other things in front of us. So I hope that we can move forward on that and as far as the plan, there is a plan. This would help fund the vast majority of the tier 1 plan of the 5. The city was broken up into 5 areas of priorities. It mainly focuses on low-income areas in East Gainesville, running fiber to their homes. And these are areas where Cox and AT&T are not going to run fiber. They're not going to run fiber to low-income neighborhoods. And this will be the next kind of digital redlining of areas that will get fiber and get good internet and areas that won't. And those areas don't have that will be left behind once again. So I hope that we can move forward with this. And there are the issues we've got to solve today, but if we don't start working on those issues that take a year to start working on or 3 months to start working on, then they will never get solved. There are also the next phases of the plan are coming back later this month or early in November. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Ariola?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate the discussion. I think we are going through the deliberative process. So what I would be prepared to approve today, and I guess I will put this into a motion. I would like to fund the utility debt forgiveness at the $250,000 amount that was put in front of us. The housing stabilization, 1.9 million, and plus the 1 million that is listed there for eviction assistance, so a total of 2.9 million. And then for NPO funding, a total pot of 7 million to be figured out how we set that money aside. And also a part of the motion is going to be to schedule another special meeting to discuss ARP, and I don't know if you all would be interested in trying to schedule a joint meeting with the other boards. I think that could be potentially beneficial, but I'll leave that up to the board.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to approve money for eviction assistance, utility assistance in the amount of $250,000, eviction assistance $1 million. This is over 2 years. 1.9 million for energy and housing rehabilitation. Is that not correct?
I would like the 1 million of eviction and the 1.9 to be just put into one pot, housing stabilization. I think that's just.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna. Okay, so 1.9 million for your eviction assistance and housing stabilization, and $7 million for nonprofits.
2.9.
What's that?
It's 2.9.
2.9.
I'm combining the. Yeah.
Okay, 2.9 for eviction assistance and energy and rehabilitation and housing stabilization, $7 million for nonprofits, and to schedule a special meeting to further discuss allocations at some point in the future. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Commissioner Ward. Mr. Feldman?
I'm just going to point out, just for information purposes, what you see in yellow has already been allocated by the commission and approved through a budget amendment. We did complete the utility assistance piece At this point, there was apparently only $25,000 in outstanding balances left from the COVID payment plans. So there's actually 225,000 of that, what's in yellow there, that will not be spent at this point, that could be reallocated, which just, I also want to emphasize, whatever numbers are here, likely will not all be spent within those, and so you'll have opportunities throughout the process through December of '24 to reallocate funds based upon needs that arise and so forth. So actions you take are not final if you don't want them to be final.
Okay, thank you for both those. And Commissioner Duncan Walker, while you were out, a motion was made and seconded to authorize $250,000 for utility assistance. Was that in addition to what we've already allocated, Commissioner?
That was what has been put in front of us. So if that was already allocated, then.
So no, okay. So, and then $2.9 million for eviction assistance and energy and home stabilization and rehabilitation, and $7 million for nonprofits, as well as schedule a special city commission meeting at some point in the future to discuss the allocation of the remaining funds. Okay, so that motion is on the floor. Commissioner Sacco.
I think I forgot what I was going to say after that. Well, speaking on the motion, I will not be supporting it. I think pulling 7 million out without figuring out how it affects the rest is, I just can't do that. I think it's too much of a substantial chunk of this, of so many projects we could do. And that's not to say that I don't support, I mean, we have $19 million worth of great projects, but I just don't feel comfortable. Could you explain how you got to 7 million? Because otherwise it just feels very arbitrary to me, and I don't see
Commissioner, do you feel like answering the question?
Yes, Harvey said 6, I said 8.
Okay.
How did the president get 32?
Yeah, doing like some of my math of some of the other stuff that we could take away, I don't feel comfortable with anything higher than 4. And that's doing math of like some projects here that we can move to GCRA or other funding sources. But considering that we have that 1.5, I think after we take out administrative costs and everything else, we have like 1.5, 1.6 out of the home funds, which makes me feel comfortable getting to 4, given that we have surplus in the utility and all that. But anything more than 4, I start to wonder where we're going to start cutting into the bone of other things that we really want to do, because that doesn't even take into account the near $1 million it will take to change all the language access across the board. And I think that was the estimate made by Ms. Bowie and Ms. Louie, that it would cost about $1 million over 3 years to just do that part. So I think I can do back of the napkin math at 4. I am terrified of allocating 7. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Santos?
Thank you, Mayor. I won't support the motion because I believe we should allocate and put it into buckets today, and kind of what buckets we want to put it into. We can always change those later, but we've kind of just chipping it away, and I don't think it's a good way to budget money. I think we should figure out what do we want to spend it on and then allocate those buckets. Chipping away, I think we'll just, I don't know, I'm not in favor of doing it that direction. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Ariola?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for a point of clarification, I did notice that there was a funding submission for the Genie project. I thought we'd allocated that in the budget.
We got a grant to do this portion of the Genie project. I asked for $1 million for language access, but it was the staff's determination that that was not an allowable expenditure under the Treasury guidelines as a separate entry, which is why I would like to embed it in the administration of all the projects that we fund through this. So it's another way to get to it, but allows us to be eligible use. Commissioner, I'm sorry, who is that? Sacco.
Thank you, Commissioner Early. You actually reminded me what I wanted to ask originally. For the CRP program, did we put that in the budget or did we remove it in the final adopted version because we were going to try to fund it out of this?
Mr. Feldman?
We had included within the budget the next phase. This would buy the capital for the remaining phases of the program.
Okay, so phase 2 is funded.
Phase 2.1 is funded, phase 2.2 and 2.3 are not.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. And Mr. Mayor, to your point, I'm fine however we work language access into it. But my recollection is it's a chunk of money that it would take to do that. So I don't want us, even if it's not listed here, I don't want us to forget that that is a considerable amount of money that it will take that can't be outlined explicitly. So yeah, those are my hesitations on doing that. I do agree that, this money, especially the nonprofit money, should be out there first before anything else. Like, it's the one that needs to be out and moving because I don't want people to wait. I just, a admittedly arbitrary number of, let's split 8 and 6 number doesn't make me feel really comfortable on how we got to that amount. Thank you.
Mr. Feldman, did you have another point?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to say too is there are projects that we did not include that are very worthy because we could not fit them within the Treasury's bucket on there. And ultimately, the city or the city manager at the time will have to certify to Treasury that these are, consistent with the Treasury's guidelines on ARPA, which, by the way, still are not final at this point. We're still operating under the interim guidance, though the Treasury said they would not claw back anything that was done under the interim guidance if it conflicts with the final guidance. But there are buckets, and the language access, for example, is not clearly into one of those buckets, which is why I suggest that we embed the language access into each of the programs where it's eligible to be included on there. So just be you need to be cognizant of that there are items that you all wanted to do. There were items that staff wanted to do. For example, in the original straw man that we presented back in March, there was fund the streetery, one of the things that came out of the pandemic. It doesn't fit within a bucket. You don't see that here. So we were very careful and deliberate to make sure that what we were recommending was within those buckets.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Merritt. So, again, I would remind everyone that we're dealing with almost an extra $2 million than is on this page. So there are $2 million for nonprofit grants on this page. $2 million additional gets us to 4, and carving out another 3 from within all of this, I think we can get done. I really do. And frankly, there are absolutely things that were in my original package back in June that either don't meet the Treasury requirements at this point, or just aren't as good as some of the things that I've seen since then, that I'm more than willing to let go of. I want everybody to recognize I'm not coming to this with sacred cows that I absolutely refuse to give on. I want us to get good product out there to help our neighbors as quickly as possible, because I believe that was the intent of Congress and President Biden when sending this money down, is that we get it to work in people's lives as quickly as possible. I like a lot of what's here, but I'm willing to move around on some of what's here as well. The nonprofit funding is huge to me. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. I don't think $7 million is an unworkable number, particularly given that we've got these additional $2 million. And it quite honestly is the difference between life and death for a lot of people in our community. Everything on this list matters and is useful and important. I want to see our nonprofits get funded. And if that means we have to shave a little here and there from some other projects, I don't think that's out of the question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll turn it over to members of the public now to share their thoughts with us. I will say that, I'm not going to support this motion as it exists. I think I could build towards something that I could support. I want to give our staff direction to start working on what an implementation plan would look like for all of these priorities. Some of it we know. Revenue replacement. That's service is already delivered, money already spent. That we know a lot about the East Side Clinic. We know a lot about the grocery store, the Mobility Hub. Those are sort of, in the parlance of the 2008 stimulus, shovel ready. But to come back with, how would the money for a community land trust be deployed? More specifics about how the broadband project would get deployed. That's what I would like to discuss at the next special meeting, is those things that I haven't heard a lot of opposition to, and we know would help a tremendous amount of folks. At that meeting, bring back what would that look like, so we can either have a higher degree of confidence that it's going to do what we intend it to do, or we can ask pointed questions and offer constructive criticism, so staff can go back and rework it and then bring it back once again. So I can support a greater amount for nonprofits. I can support a lesser amount, at least in the short term, for housing stabilization, although I will continue to argue that is, if not the highest priority, it should be one of the higher priorities. But I'm willing to continue discussing some of those things at a future meeting. But I would also like to see us be very intentional. In soccer, they have a saying, don't be afraid of the ball. We can't be afraid of the ball here. We've got to make decisions that gets this money working for our neighbors. And for us to sit around on it longer without even directing staff to do more work to bring us back specific implementation plans and strategies, I think is hiding from our responsibilities. So, I want to see us be a little bit more decisive today. Commissioner Ariola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was an excellent administrative point. So if the seconder is okay with it, I'd like to amend the language of our motion to authorize staff to return to the commission with implementation plans for the points that were in the motion. So nonprofit assistance, the utility assistance, and the housing stabilization.
But none of the rest of these?
I don't agree with that list. And to be honest with you, I don't know.
That's fine. I got you.
I don't know where that list came from. I'll just say it straight up. I don't know where it came from, and I don't agree with it.
Okay. Seconder agrees that the points in the motion would come back with staff analysis. Okay, Mr. Folsom, thank you. We're going to open it up for public comment. Let's start with our first caller, and then we'll go back and forth so we can clean the area between each speaker.
All righty, Mr. Mayor. Our first caller today is Mr. Mike Ryan. Mr. Ryan, you've got 3 minutes. Mr. Ryan, are you out there? All right, we're going to go to our next caller, Mr. Mayor. Let's go to Ms. Joanne Engelbert. Ms. Engelbert, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. My name is Joanne Engelbert, as you've just been informed. My focus here is language access, especially language access to healthcare, because a stunning disparity revealed by COVID is the lethal impact on the immigrant community of our failures to provide adequate translation services. Think of it this way. In a health crisis in our state, if you don't understand English, you don't have access to the information you need to protect yourself and your family from disease or to get the help that is actually available to you. People die from a lack of language access. Our health systems must include an essential link in order for immigrant families to survive. That link is translation. Roughly 11% of our workforce require translation into the languages they speak in order to understand what the dangers are and how to get help. Not just translation into Spanish, mind you, but translation into Creole, French, Chinese, Korean, indigenous languages, and many more. Now, we have known this for decades, but the sheer number of unnecessary COVID deaths resulting from mere ignorance of available resources has made it tragically. We must correct this glaring shortfall in our system. Florida is in actual violation of federal law in this context. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 spells this out. Demands language access to federally funded health resources. In other words, translation of key text is required by law. Compliance with this mandate must be basic to ARP planning, as was suggested in the initial remarks I have been listening to. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Engelbert. Mr. Mayor, back to you.
Okay, welcome.
Good afternoon. Hello to each commissioner. I want to first start out by saying, Mr. Folsom, you did a tremendous job. Is he still here? Well, Mr. Folsom did a tremendous job. I've been involved with this equity budget tool since the very beginning as a citizen, having some input on that, and I can see exactly where he got those numbers from, not only what was discussed at that time, but the things that have transpired in our community since then. He did an excellent job of putting all that stuff together, so I just want to commend him, first of all. Next, I want to talk on Mayor Poe, and I totally agree with that sense of urgency that we're in the midst of a pandemic and we must do something. You know, we've done some talking, we must do something. So let's just get something done. And Commissioner Ariola, your concerns with doing more for this community as a whole, especially those of us involved in the nonprofit community, I appreciate that as well. But I would just want to go back and say, let's just recognize that we, the citizens, we feel like we want to be a part. I've got work to do. I have work to do. I leave my occupation, even though I'm self-employed. I leave and I come here because I want to be a part of this process. And when you put forth a motion while we're sitting here and not taking our thoughts and ideas into consideration before you bring forth the motion, it really doesn't feel like you're concerned about what we think. And with that being said, how that process even plays itself out, had you listened, you would have, I honestly believe that your motion would have been different if you allowed other people to have some input on it. So I pray that each and every one of you will consider the fact that we citizens come here to be a part of the process and just be patient and allow us to have some say, and then make your motion. You know, you got all the variables that you need to consider. So with that being said, again, I hope that a decision is made about that money. Personally, I am involved in a nonprofit here in the city of Gainesville since 2010. And we don't have any money funded from any other grant and any organization. It's just citizens who come together feeding citizens. We go out of our way, our time, our efforts, our gas, everything that gets done is done with our own funds. And so here's an opportunity to help us to, and right now what COVID has done, it has ravaged this country, not only this community, but people are hungry and they need to eat. And so we are filling that void. So we'd appreciate an opportunity to have a meeting where we as nonprofits can say to you, here's exactly what we do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the work you do in our community as well. Adam, back to you.
Mayor, filling in for Adam is Larry.
Oh, hey,
And
Larry.
Mike Ryan, I think, is back with us. Mike?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. This is Mike Ryan Simonovich calling from the Duck Pond here on the east side of Gainesville. And I was calling to speak in favor of using these funds from the federal government to set up a municipal broadband service. The pandemic has really illustrated the importance of digital connectivity. It's where children get their education. It's where people look for jobs. When we're in lockdowns, it's where people connect with their faith communities and with their families and it's where they socialize. Our options for ISPs in Gainesville are not as diverse as they should be, and I think that it would be a very good service to the citizens of Gainesville to provide them with a municipally owned, municipally controlled fiber optic network. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you. Welcome.
I'm here today to speak in support of funding expansion of GRU's internet service to the residential customers. I've been involved in this, several of you know, for quite a while. Broadband is
I'm
already on
sorry,
track.
could you just introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Greg Larvins.
Thank you very much.
I've been on the broadband committee.
Yeah.
So broadband was already on track to become a must-have utility before the COVID crisis became into our life. And it became clear that our life in the future will be ever more dependent on solid high-speed internet service. It's in the best interest of the citizens of Gainesville that this be publicly owned, and as our other necessary services are, just like the other utilities. What I would like to also express is my profound disappointment in the apparent lack of creative thought in our city government. I first came here in 1970, and it wasn't long before I became aware of the two Gainesvilles that existed here. Everyone referred to East Gainesville as if it was a different city, and I think still do to a certain extent. There has been no end of programs to address this issue, and I was surprised to return to Gainesville on my return in 2015. Things are pretty much still the same as they were when I left in 1985. In my view, it is clear that these programs up till now have been largely ineffective in breaking the cycle of poverty and crime that is worse in East Gainesville than in other parts of the city. What is needed is something that will truly break this cycle by providing the opportunity to learn a new trade or skill and then employ these people to give them the valuable experience they need so they can lift themselves into a better life. I'm surprised that all the intelligent people in our city government couldn't put these two problems together and see that we could have a win-win situation by turning the broadband project into a jobs project with life-changing opportunities for those that need it most. The project will be building new infrastructure and support, which will require all sorts of skills that could be given to people with new careers. I would suggest reconsidering the allocation of these funds with these thoughts in mind. Put money in this project, more money towards this project, and start solving two of our oldest problems. I'll leave with my favorite proverb: give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime.
Thank you very much. Okay, Larry, back to you.
Betsy Riley on the line. Betsy?
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Dr. Thank you. I'm Dr. Betsy Riley. I'm a founder of a startup that is here in Gainesville, a software startup, so I use the internet all the time. I'm also here to speak in favor of broadband being a municipal service. So I use it every day as part of my job, but it's also just a requirement of modern society. 100 years ago, people might have said that electricity was a luxury, but that's not the case anymore. Students can't access classes without the internet. Employees can't access telework or remote work. People order groceries, pay taxes, set up their telehealth calls to talk to their doctors. I personally use the internet for all these things. The more the internet becomes a necessity in our daily lives, the greater the burden that broadband monopolies are going to have on our communities. Which brings me to my second point, which is that this is a pretty rare opportunity to inspire competition in internet services in Gainesville. Internet providers around the country are refusing to compete with each other. The result is higher prices for everyone. If you look at maps of internet accessibility in cities across the nation, there's almost no overlap between neighborhoods. So even though they are not directly collaborating with each other, internet providers are refusing to create competitors already in that area. And having just moved here in March from New Jersey, I can personally vouch that it drives prices higher and higher and higher. It's ultimately an equity issue. People like me that live on the west side of Gainesville, we get groceries and doctors, but people who can't afford it or can't access it, they don't. So the result is no choice for providers for residents. No choice means no competition and no higher prices for everyone. I see this as a long-term investment in our city's future. Even at lower prices, then these services will ultimately pay for themselves, which is going to set up Gainesville for future success. And for my last comment, I just want to thank Commissioner Reyna Seco for her comments. I think they were spot on, and I feel very confident in hearing them, that we have somebody that's looking out for our budget, of making sure that each item, $1 million item, is linked back to something. And I look forward to hearing your budget at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Robin Louie, and I'm here today not as the director of a nonprofit organization, but actually as your lead community liaison to the Gainesville Ginny Project. For our community that's listening, that's the Gainesville Immigrant Neighbor Inclusion Project. You know, as the city considers the inequities that we've experienced here and are trying to address that with ARPA funding, we at the Ginny Committee, the actual steering committee, are imploring you to not leave immigrants behind. There has already been discussion about the presence of those that are limited English proficient speakers, and we know that ARPA has been designed to respond to COVID-related disparities. So considering so many immigrants were unable to find health information or services at the height of the pandemic, and also currently, we implore you to really reconsider the issue of language access. Now, we do understand the city is not responsible for healthcare services. We do understand that the city has and continues to play a role in communicating access to services or collaborating with county or other partners to make that available. Unfortunately, because of lack of that information being available in English, many were not able to access those services or today. So we also know that within the city commission, or actually within the administration, there is concern whether ARPA funding can go to language access. And we want you to know that there are already precedents about the use of those funds in other cities. So Boston has allocated $500,000 of ARPA funding towards extensive language access. That means full translation of websites. Would be the equivalent of the Gainesville Alert System. Milwaukee, of the 80 internal ARPA proposals from charter offices that were originally presented to their finance board, language accessibility is one of 4 that has progressed to be reviewed by the commission. We will actually provide to you more information on that. Another speaker will do that, and we actually have contacts of the aldermen that you could speak to understand how they went about this process. As the community liaison to the city's initiative, and on behalf of really the steering committee, we want to assist the city to be successful in increasing language access. And so in doing that, we appreciate what you began this session with, Mayor Poe, a recognition of the importance of articulating any actions or decisions made with ARPA funding, or hopefully just in general about city services, into other languages. What we're asking for is a commitment from you all today to actually make sure that that is embedded and that that's passed as a motion, not just something that was discussed.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Louie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Larry, back to you.
Mayor Nathan Scott. Nathan?
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. Nathan Scott. So I'd like to add my 2 cents here. This $32 million of federal pandemic funding represents a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to address critical problems facing the city of Gainesville. How many affordable housing units could be built with this $32 million, Commissioners? The city could build its own self-supporting affordable housing complex with this amount of money, but the City Commission is squandering this opportunity. This meeting clearly illustrates the ongoing dysfunction of the mayor of the Gainesville City Commission and why we need to go back to a 5-member city commission. You guys can't decide anything. You'd be better off with a Ouija board or SimCity with your, again, this is a missed opportunity because of the infighting and the misplaced priorities. Mr. Folsom made a comment. That comment's incorrect. This money is not your money. Give out as personal patronage. It's taxpayer money. You need to be cognizant of that, Commissioners, because you guys like to spend money on the craziest things instead of addressing the priorities that you claim to have. It's hypocritical. Mr. Feldman stated what you see in yellow. Whatever that is, it's not available to the public. So much for having a transparent process. Mr. Feldman also stated that the amount of utility assistance needs to be minimized. Well, if you guys would pay attention to the GRU operational data and look how much money is currently in collections, that money is about, I don't know, $700,000, $800,000, $900,000, and you guys just raised GRU electric rates by 7%. Commissioner Ward, Mayor Poe, you know what I'm talking about. Raised wastewater rates. You guys continue to raise our property taxes. So again, misplaced priorities. So little money is being given to utility assistance and affordable housing here because it's being diverted to broadband and other nonsense. Speaking of broadband, BrewCom is financially insolvent. The broadband proposal is yet another ill-advised, fiscally irresponsible, failed policy decision of the Gainesville City Commission. You seem to be picking winners and losers here. Okay? Are the students and the duck pond going to get free internet at the expense of the other taxpayers? How are we going to pay for this on a forward-going basis? How is this equitable? It's not. And it's sad to think that almost a third of your $32 million is slated or recommended to be allocated to this boondoggle project. I mean, BrewCom's financially insolvent. You guys don't understand the concept of recurring costs, Commissioners. How much affordable housing could you build with this money? So the next time y'all bring up affordable housing, I'm going to put this right back on you, okay? Because I'm tired of your hypocrisy. I'm tired of you raising people's GRU rates that can't afford it, and I'm tired of you raising our property taxes because you fail to constrain your spending and live within your means. You continue to expand government, okay? The things you're adding here, proposed things, are going to continue to expand government. How are you going to pay for that, Commissioners? Come on, be realistic.
Hey, thank you. Next speaker, please. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Dr. Teresa Beachy, Executive Director at Peaceful Paths. I wanted to first thank you for the motion and just make a couple of points quickly. The ARPA funding, as Robin so eloquently pointed out, is really about vulnerable people. And at the end of the day, the nonprofits in this community are serving some of the most vulnerable populations. And I would say that the risk continues to grow, and frankly, we can't wait. Many of us, as Commissioner Ward said, had put in requests and discussion points back in May, and now we're at the end of October nearly. And, we're still waiting on a dollar amount, and then we know that there's a process to come. So we're okay with that in the sense that we understand this is a process. None of us want to squander the opportunity to spend this money in a very real way. But one of the comments that was made is, how do we get to these numbers? How do we know that this is a good number? And math is not always my strong point either. But I did some configuration, and think about it this way. Our poverty rate in this county continues to be around 23%. We know that. We've heard it. The census numbers, everything that comes out, our equity report shows it. And so if you look at that as the baseline, that's the vulnerable population most impacted by COVID, 23% of this money, this 34 million, is 7.8 million. So there's your rationale. There's a good rationale for spending $7 million of this pot on vulnerable populations through the nonprofit community who have the infrastructure, the know-how, who do the reporting, who have proven deliverables, provable outcomes. We have staff. We're ready to go. We do this work every day. We're ready to step up to the plate and do more of it. We've seen domestic violence crime increase. We've seen domestic violence service demand increase dramatically at Peaceful Paths. That is nothing new for Grace, for Family Promise, for Catholic Charities, for St. Francis House, all of us across the board. We're just asking for your help to get to the next step in this process. So I would encourage you to support the motion. 7 million is not arbitrary when we look at it as the percentage of the vulnerable population that we're serving. The county is not doing this with their ARPA funding. We don't have access. So you guys are our only hope in being able to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Back to you.
Armando Gomez. Armando?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, first I had a question, and Mr. Mayor, is there any way that we could get any of the funds that were supposed to be dispersed when it came to helping with utilities? I think there was a motion made prior to having the manager and the general manager from GRU working together to come out with some formula and how that's going to be administered. If you could speak to that later, Mr. Mayor, or provide some feedback, or if somebody could get back to me, that would be great. The other thing I had a question about is I first want to acknowledge Commissioner Adrian Hayes Santos' goal. It's been a long goal of his to address the digital divide, and I think it is commendable. I want to acknowledge that first and foremost. The other thing that I think is important is it is something that we do need to address. I am somewhat going to disagree with Mr. Scott in that while it is maybe insolvent when it comes to GRUCOM, there is definitely a definitive need when there's not been private investment and there's not internet service providers actually stepping up to the plate to address this matter, number one. Number two, it's also important, I want to acknowledge, Mr. Mayor, everybody's wanting to acknowledge this race and equity toolkit. First and foremost, let's acknowledge all of the Office of Equity and Inclusion and the staff of the Office of Equity and Inclusion that came up with this race and equity toolkit that has been being used since last year. Shout out to Ben and all of that, to Shakayla, to that staff. They have been working very, very hard, and they need to acknowledge the people that are doing the work on the ground, because those are the people that are really doing the work and why we're benefiting from this now. It's important to acknowledge them, number one. The other thing that's important is, Mr. Mayor, when we're wanting to address things of poverty, we're wanting to address things that are going to have a meaningful impact. People that can have access to a digital divide, it does address those barriers. But we also want to look on our return on investment, because it is going to be a one-time expenditure. So we want to make sure that we're doing the best that we can. And I will agree with Commissioner Sacco in that we want to make sure that we're doing the best we can. It's not necessarily about math, because sometimes it's a human capital issue, and the math is the math, and of course it's important, but the meaningful impact and how it's going to affect people and transmogrify a community is extremely important. So we're all trying to do the best we can with these funds. Get excited just to make sure that we're maximizing the use and stretching the dollars to get the maximum usage out of them. So kudos. I appreciate all of you wanting to address this digital divide. There are other things that we could do. I want to make sure that we're having an impact to affect people and affect poverty and affect things. The other thing, Mr. Mayor, if you could speak to the fact, I don't know who the assistant city manager was. I don't know if it was Mr. Murray or was one of the assistant city managers was addressing the issue of translation earlier this year in a presentation when it came to our immigrant populations. I can't remember who it was. Can you address that, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I can. Ms. Bowie has been the staff liaison with the Jenny Grant Project, And the commission approved $250,000 for emergency utility assistance for anybody that was impacted due to COVID with their utility bills. And that's been administered already, as the manager said at the beginning of the meeting. Sir, welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Ethan Mayadeni Dell. I'm working with Robin on the GNV project. As the city works through the ARPA requirements, the GNV Steering Committee would like to present a revised proposal that takes into consideration recent issues learned about ARPA funding, namely the one-time expenses and that language access can be funded with ARPA money, as we see in Boston and proposed in Milwaukee, which we are presenting to you in those pamphlets there. Following Boston's example of designating a department to help oversee translation efforts across the city, it is Ginny's hope and belief that this responsibility would be taken on by the Office of Equity and Inclusion. Now, in order for the city to meet the standards to be a certified welcoming city to immigrants, refugees, and limited English proficient speakers, and to make sure that the inequities experienced by limited English speakers during this pandemic are reduced, we propose that the Commission support ARPA funding for 1, translation of any city future messaging related to mitigating the spread of COVID, behavioral health care needs exacerbated by the pandemic, support to commissions hardest hit by education disparities, internet access in light of the disparities. We also propose funding for the translation of emergency orders rendered by the City of Gainesville, funding for the translation of the new City of Gainesville website into Spanish and with highlights in 4 other languages, funding for the translation of the Alert GNV application into Spanish, and linkage to a website for critical messages in 4 other languages, translation of GRU applications and payment options into Spanish and with highlights in 4 other languages, and translation of all direct person impact elements of commission decisions on the use of ARPA funding into Spanish and 4 other languages in social media. We ask that the Commission pass this revised and better informed proposal, use the contact information on this sheet, and to contact the aldermen and commissioners in the other cities that have already passed legislation like this, and to identify best practices and direct city staff to assess the costs associated with these 6 items. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Larry?
Candace King, Mayor. Candace?
No?
Yes, you have the floor for 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Candace King. I have worked, for over 20 years in healthcare services, and I wanted to bring to your attention just a clarification of one of the points that got on during this meeting. When you all met with the county and voted on pursuing the U.S. Health East Gainesville Urgent Care Center, your motion included inviting providers from the healthcare sector to present alternatives for addressing health disparities in East Gainesville. I work with a large group of organizations that are in the healthcare safety net. We call ourselves the Safety Net Collaborative. And we prepared a proposal for dealing with assisting people to access affordable healthcare services, primary healthcare services. I've spoken to each of you about it, and you provided very good feedback for our concept. What I wanted to ensure is that latecomers, so to speak, to presenting proposals to you all, meaning that we weren't part of that group in the early summer that you have referred to repeatedly through the meeting. Wanted to know and to ensure that latecomers like ourselves with ideas, proposals that we feel like are important to be heard, and in fact are things that have been done successfully in the community will be heard. So I assume that's something that Mr. Fulton will be able to address, but I hadn't heard that as part of the meeting today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments. If you'd like to begin, ma'am, please.
Okay, thank you. My name is Diane D'Imperio, and I'm a retired public health professional.
My career focused on developing and managing healthcare programs for low-income, uninsured, and Medicaid populations. I'd like to compliment the City Commission for holding this public meeting and accepting community requests for use of the American Rescue Plan funds. I would also like to recognize the leadership you are providing on the importance of addressing the long-standing health disparities on the east side of Gainesville. The residents of the east side are more likely to be Black, low income, and uninsured than other city residents. They are more likely to use hospital services because they are unable to participate in primary preventive health care, including medical, dental, and mental health services. The city is currently proposing to give $2.25 million to Shands to build an urgent care center. I think this is based on a misunderstanding. The description of the project written by city commissioners this summer said funds will be used to, quote, fund a health clinic that would help address health inequities, closed caption. I know the original vision was for a facility that would offer preventive services in addition to after-hours care. But the actual proposal described in September was for a standard urgent care center that would provide only medical care for non-emergent medical needs. Urgent care services will not address health disparities. It will not improve health outcomes among this population. Shands runs a successful business, and if they are truly committed to offering health services on the east side, they can afford to build the building. We can and must do better for our residents who need preventive health services. These services are inexpensive and cost-effective. Last month, the county agreed to fund expansion of services offered by the county health department, so they will soon be offering primary care until 7 o'clock in the evening, Monday through Friday, and from 9 to 2 on Saturday and Sunday. We should use the federal funds to ensure access to other needed services like dental and mental health services. Data show that about half of the low-income uninsured residents in Florida are eligible for heavily subsidized marketplace insurance plans. Federal funds already support a Navigator program that can help eligible adults enroll in these plans, so another good use of the funds would be outreach to make sure uninsured residents contact the program. I appreciate your commitment to improving health outcomes. I recommend the city work with Eastside community and health professionals to look at cost-effective ways to use our tax dollars to provide access to services that really will make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry?
Tana Silva. Tana?
Yes, hello, thank you. I hope at least 4 of you will support the motion. Period. I had requested information on to see the list of how the CARES money was spent last year. And what I got back was a list of $1.4 million worth of mainly sanitizing City Hall, where no one was particularly working at the time, and GPD night shift meals. I know people who didn't, for one reason or another, manage to get any of the money that was meant to be helping those who lost their jobs or businesses. One unfortunate young man also had a sinkhole open up in his backyard. His house was condemned. The insurance wouldn't pay for it. The mortgage company wouldn't cut him any slack. And his landlord, the business that he came here to start to pick up, was U.S., and they didn't cut him any slack either. And when you talk about people almost 2 years, I don't see that U.S. is suffering. I don't see that there's any need for city taxpayers to through this funding to be supporting U.S. in a clinic or anything else. I think the broadband obviously is something that particularly Commissioner Hayes Santos has been promoting for 4 years, and that is not urgent. There's more infrastructure money coming from the federal government that, if that proves to be something feasible, could be done with other funds. However, the history of government broadband is one of a loss of billions of dollars, and you can check that out yourself. So I don't see that that is something that's going to help the people who've been suffering for a year and a half or almost 2 years. Housing rehab, hallelujah, I'm all about it. However, the city commission has, well, the people who were on it, nearly 3.5 years ago at the summit, housing summit, have really done nothing else. The whole point has been inclusionary zoning, and I haven't seen any big emphasis on housing rehab, which I think is much needed. But I was shocked to hear that it would be $30,000 to $50,000 per house for weatherization plus. That is, you know, I mean, anyway, at any rate, I think Commissioner Ariola has a good idea to focus on these
Thank you, Ms. Silva,
doable
for your time has expired.
items.
Thank you very much. Ms. Chestnut.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cynthia Moore Chestnut. Just for clarity's sake, we have a Shands East Side Clinic already on Waldo Road. If your chart could reflect Shands East urgent care is what's being requested, but we already have the East Side Clinic. I'm not aware, unless I missed them, of public input sessions that were held in the community for ARPA funds. They were? Okay, then I missed them. I am here on behalf of Mount Pleasant United Methodist Church, and we have operated a food program for the last 18 years. And hopefully we'll be able to seek some funds here. My concern is with having sufficient community input into this process. For example, the grocery store in East Gainesville, people did not have the opportunity to provide input into that facility. However, if it's not going to work at this point, I'd like to see that $3 million stay in the budget for East Side. It would certainly provide an opportunity, because every politician that has ever run for office always talks about what they're going to do for East Side development. This would then give a boost to it if you keep the funds there, whether we get the grocery store or not. On broadband, I would hate to see $9 million go just solely from the city to broadband. I think the school board should fund part of it. I think the county commission should fund a part. Necessary? Yes. I like the proposal Brian Eastman presented yesterday to start with East Gainesville, but when you start with East Gainesville, get other partners so that we're not taking $9 million from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry, back to you.
Mayor Telford Cartwright. Telford.
Yes. Good afternoon, city commissioners, servant leaders. Yes. Let me quote something in one of my notes. Use the poor to extract money from the rich and give to themselves. Socialist elite, socialist Democrats. Vote no for Democrats. Okay. Now, Mayor Poe, the biomass plant, including GRU, was, I thought, what was supposed to be an option for the residents here in Gainesville, Florida, a public option. But now we have the highest utility rates in the state of Florida. My utility bill is around $500 a month, Mr. Mayor. Now, it was you, Mr. Mayor, who authorized $750,000 out of the city budget to reseed Ironwood Golf Course on the east side of Gainesville. And if I'm wrong, which I know I'm not wrong, can you say something about this? Over $30 million a month leaves this small community of GRU customers and goes to the lien holder of the biomass plant. Mr. Poe, this is, as far as I'm concerned, this is a socialist scheme to further the size and scope of government for more control and increasing taxation and to the, as far as I'm concerned, to the point of oppression. Let me echo Mr. Scott. This is an attempt to grow the size and scope of government. Mr. Poe, I don't rely on the government for assistance, state or federal. I didn't receive one stimulus check, Mr. Poe. I don't receive food stamps, Mr. Poe. I don't temporarily reside at the homeless shelter or Grace Market place, Mr. Poe. I don't temporarily reside at St. Francis House, Mr. Poe. And I'll tell you what I do, Mr. Poe. I work hard with my hands. I live within a meager budget.
Thank you, Mr.
Poe.
Cartwright. Thanks for calling in. Mr. Cartman, welcome.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Commission, John DeCarmine, Executive Director out at Grace. First, I want to say thank you for including nonprofits as critical partners in making sure this money works for the community in the best way possible. As a brief overview of the kinds of projects you will see from the nonprofit community and how this ties in, and I'm asking those of you who currently are thinking about voting no on this motion to pay attention to not only what I'm sharing, but also what Ms. Beachy, Dr. Beachy is sharing, what you've heard from others in the community. Grace is putting in a request to not only fund affordable housing development, as I know other partners are, there are critical services for domestic violence victims coming to you from other agencies. We're also asking for basic needs for pandemic response. We've had indoor dining at our cafe where we serve about 150,000 meals a year, closed since March of 2020. We are looking for funding for a school nurse kind of pilot project where we can have somebody on campus who can triage people as they say that they have urgent medical needs, and we are not skilled to determine whether or not they need to call an ambulance. 2015 presentation from Gainesville Fire Rescue and Alachua County Fire Rescue found we were spending about $37,000 a month in sending EMS out to the Grace campus. So we're looking at pilot projects that can potentially save the city money as we go. We're also looking at ways that we can leverage the unprecedented amounts of money that are coming into the nonprofit community. Many of these have a very short time frame. For example, the ESG CV2 funding that is currently in, we're able to leverage, we're bringing about $1.7 million to the table with that. But all of those staffing dollars have to be spent by June 30th of 2022. So what the ARP funding allows us to do is build the capacity to continue to bring in funds like that so that we are able to continue providing services even before we've fully started to see the impact of the eviction moratorium closing. Organizations like Grace, Peaceful Paths, Family Promise, Catholic Charities are your trusted partners. We have extensive experience managing millions of dollars in contracts and grants to get services directly into the hands of people who need them most. Solving homelessness is a housing issue. It is not a substance abuse issue. It is not a mental health issue. Homelessness is a housing issue. That puts it squarely in the realm of the city to take this on. Homelessness is also a social justice issue. It's also a racial justice and an equity issue. While about 19% of our local population is African American, 43% of the homeless population is African American. It's a domestic violence issue, with 1 out of every 3 women reporting becoming homeless as a result of domestic violence. And to close, I just want to point out, nonprofits have become experts in distinguishing between wants and needs. Many people who want the services we provide are not those who need them most. I would ask that you look at this list and understand what is wanted right now and what is critically needed.
Thank you. Larry?
Nancy Darren, Mayor. Nancy?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you. Thanks to Mr. Folson and all the efforts to put this together. I'm really glad for the motion and including being able to move forward. With the nonprofits, Peaceful Paths did a great job of recognizing that the 23% baseline justifies that $7 million going there. So funneling through nonprofits is extremely important. They have the trust, the relationships, the expertise to run things well and get this out the door. I think the more we can look at collaborations and coordinations and synergies, we can stretch these dollars even more. So engaging with the school board, the county commission, and also within the nonprofits, not looking at them always individually, but looking at the synergy that can happen when they work together to be able to provide these essential services. So working food, for example, through the kitchen, the youth programming, the seed programs that has linked together Grow Hub and schools and farmers and entrepreneurs and pipelines to youth careers and leadership with Chef Underground and Greater Duval and Cultural Arts Commission. So when you're setting up your process to look at them at things such as working food, but also look at the collaborations and the connections that they're already doing to amplify the impact of all these amazing nonprofits, some of which are small, but when they work together, it's pretty amazing. Food systems and food is one of our greatest vulnerabilities in this country and globally. And so the more that we can do to localize and stabilize, and that leads to also our other essential services that should be in the public realm, and we've got this one-shot deal to set up capacity to continue to do those multipliers. So food, energy, broadband, I appreciate the efforts over the years of Commissioner Hayes Santos. I absolutely agree broadband is one of those essential public services. These are things where profit cannot be the motivator. It's what is going to create a thriving community of well-being that has the power and the ownership.
Thank you, Ms. Darren.
And
Appreciate
the
you calling in.
ability to.
All right, next speaker, please. Welcome. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Veronica Robledo. I'm an immigrant rights paralegal with Florida Legal Services, and I also serve on the GNV Steering Committee. It's critically important to allocate funds to ensure that the people hardest hit will benefit from any city program funded with these federal relief dollars. So we know that low income, very low income, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and immigrants have been the most impacted by the pandemic in the sense of illness, hospitalizations, loss of income, and housing. Since I work with immigrants, I just want to make sure that we don't forget to be intentional about reaching that community. 11% of Gainesville's population are immigrants, according to most recent census data. We know it's much more. Therefore, the city should prioritize language access, specifically translating information about funded programs into languages other than English, including other programs like the emergency rental assistance money, which does not have an immigration status requirement. In regards to the $7 million, I completely agree with some of the previous speakers, Dr. Beachy and others, that this is not too much to set aside for nonprofits. I also want to ask that the application process be clear, well advertised, and put out in various languages other than English. Some of you answered that there were community feedback sessions. I was present at one of those for the first round of proposals. There were only 4 people at my session. So I think the city can do more at involving the community input. The Human Rights Coalition of Alachua County was one of the nonprofits that submitted a proposal to the Office of Equity and Inclusion in June to request funding for the Community ID program, which up until now has been run completely on volunteers. That program not only benefits immigrants, but can also benefit others that might have barriers to accessing state-issued ID, including the homeless population, individuals recently released from prison, incarceration, trans individuals, and seasonal elders. So we know that ID has been a barrier to access testing, vaccine, and other city services. I just want to also suggest that we have a way that's embedded in this whole process to measure outcomes and have a checks and balances to make sure that whatever the program is, those that are benefiting from we prioritize very low income, immigrants, Black neighbors, and people of color. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry?
Mayor, there are no additional callers.
Okay, very good. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Jane Morosky. I'm the Executive Director of Family Promise of Gainesville. I do also want to echo what a few other folks have said. Thank you for allowing public input in this ARP process. And as Dr. Vici noted, not all of the other folks who have ARP funding are allowing a similar process. So I don't want to repeat what other people have said, but sort of echo a few things that are key, which is now is the time for nonprofits that were hit so hard by the pandemic. We need your help now. And while I appreciate what Commissioner Ariola said about waiting on some of the funds, if we can set aside that $7 million that Commissioner Ariola's motion suggests and do it in a transparent process in which all the nonprofits receive funding as quickly as possible, it'll help folks like us who, by the way, one caller said that affordable housing is not being proposed. As Mr. DeCarmine said, he is proposing affordable housing. We are too. That would be permanent, supported, permanent housing, affordable housing for families with children who are working members of our community and are critically vulnerable people. We have the capacity to do this now. We've just finished a project that was similar, and we did it between October 19th and December 31st last year. So an incredibly tight timeline. So I hope that you'll focus on those nonprofits who have the capacity to do this now and set up a transparent process for them to quickly get the funds for the folks who are the most vulnerable members of our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's pretty sticky.
Thank you as always, Ms. Molden. Welcome.
Khalid Blount. I really agree with the idea of taking up some of the CRA budget items with some of this funding. I just want to point out that, CRA is no longer a special categorical. It's just part of the general fund. What's a little unique about it is one of the few items you fund in tandem with the county, but it's city spending like any other city spending. And some of those projects need a lot more discussion and hashing out. I hope to continue to be part of that, even though I was somehow unable to reapply to apply to be reappointed to CRA, but I hope to continue to pay attention to it. The rental program, I want to know how soon the city will decide, if it hasn't already, that the ERAP program can cut checks directly to renters who are delinquent on their rent. We are seeing some large landlords refuse to cooperate with the program. You'll see the community respond to one of those over here on Main Street 2 days from now. I don't know if it's just a vicious personality involved or some of these landlords feel like they have something to hide and they're afraid of an additional relationship with a new federal office. But when landlords refuse to cooperate, they're willing to evict people, even though federal funding is coming down the pipe to catch up. They're turning down the money to throw the people out. And those people need to be able to get those checks cut directly to them instead of the landlord who is not working with the program. As for the health care, Mr. Imperio pointed out that, yeah, it's good to have emergency service closer to residents on the east side, but it's perhaps more important to have services that prevent them from becoming emergent. That means primary care, and a big component of that is patient education toward the management of chronic disease conditions. So that should be a higher priority. And as for buildings, giving Shands UF big bucks to build something, well, this community gave them an entire hospital and they tore it down. Where's the reciprocity? So that needs to be considered. Is UF really your friend? I keep asking you guys that. I hope you will roll out the things that have already been well discussed, well hashed out, and deserve consideration.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Brian Eastman, founder of Connected Gainesville, and I'm here to strongly encourage you to include staff's request for $9.6 million to bridge the digital divide and create a municipal broadband service for people in this community. This would be a transformational change for our community, an opportunity that rarely comes around. And I know that every single one of you guys up there are on there because you wanted to make big change. You came in at a time of change in our nation, and you believe that local government can solve the problems that people have. And moments to make change like that don't come around very often. Maybe once in a generation. When they go away, it's very hard for them to come back. Right now, we are paying some of the highest prices in the United States for unreliable internet, which is well documented in CCG's report to the Commission. It has left thousands of families out of home broadband, and we know the reason for this. It's because we're in a monopoly, which makes it very little reason for them to improve service or to reduce price. So the results of this are devastating. A study by Michigan State last year looked at students with home broadband and those without, controlling for socioeconomics in this, so looking only at the impact of broadband, found that students without broadband come at a serious disadvantage. They have about half a letter grade lower than ones with it. By the time they reach the 11th grade, so about to graduate and go off to college, they have about the digital literacy skills of a middle schooler, so about 8th grade. So it shouldn't be any surprise that they're about 38% less likely to go to college than students with broadband in their homes. The status quo is hurting our children's future before they even have a chance to get out of the house. So 4 years ago, we began studying this with almost an entirely different commission than we have now. And it's been long, but we now have an incredible amount of data, research, and plans about how we would roll out. We have 2 in-depth studies from respected broadband firms. We know how much it will cost. We know where it will go. We know how to staff it. We know the legal barriers are surmountable. We know that we can do this. We just have to have the courage to act. The majority of Gainesville residents are calling for action, according to the ETC Institute, who you may remember puts out every year asking citizens what top issues they care about. 76% of Gainesville residents thinks it's either very important or essential for city government to take action on this. It's one of the most important issues for the people of our city when they rank it, particularly in East Gainesville, where this would primarily go. The city, county, and school board have voted unanimously in April to expand affordable broadband to every house in Alachua County. The county, as you may have read, has allocated about $15 million for this. So I'm asking you all to do your part, to join in on that, and to not let this opportunity pass us by. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, and greet each of you. I'm here on behalf of Mount Pleasant United Methodist Church, where I serve as the senior pastor. And we've had an opportunity to share with each of you in your chambers as we presented our proposal, but I'm here to advocate. Once I heard that you are only allocating $2 million of the 34 plus million that you have, really that's only a drop in the bucket. There are people out there who are hurting. They've been hurting prior to this pandemic, and this pandemic has only exacerbated the problem. Mount Pleasant has been on the front line for now some 18 years, but she has had a footprint in this community now for 154 years, of which we will be celebrating next month. And so we've seen the needs of people up close and personal for years now. And we are prepared, we're poised to make a difference, but we need the county as well as the city's help. And we trust that you all will advocate and also raise that limit to approximately about 25% for these nonprofits. And in a large way, we're holding hands together, trying to make a difference. Some of us speak from different vantages in terms of what services we provide. But one of the number one needs in this community is to address the hungry and the homeless. And we're prepared to do that, but we need you all to raise that limit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
My name's Donald Shepard. I'm running for city mayor. I'm a people's representative, and I want to say itemization is properization. Why I say that is because this is a lack that has been happening since 1964, as this lady has stated in her statement. I'm stating it has happened ever since I have came into Gainesville in '97, and this is something that's been denied throughout our city commission and mayorships. Where's the strength of that? I'm going to tell you, I am the strength of that, and I will use facts, itemization, and the clearization of these people that come here that take and ask for this. Where were they at the Thomas Center when this was talked about? When these items, Peaceful Pass and these others that have wanting this money, I did not see it on our city advisory board sheet. I didn't see their names. It was a zero by their names. Far as this John Hillman, who runs the Grace Marketplace, I think he needs to be removed because he's done nothing for these people. The same thing in the 12 years
Shepard,
I've been here, sir.
Please avoid attacking individuals. No ad hominem attacks.
Why?
Okay, you can speak about
You're
the
standing
plans
here
and
before
policies,
you,
but not
telling
people.
you lies about what they're doing, but where is the action? I want to see the paperwork that these people have done for the people. If they're going to come here and ask for this money from all of us, then where is their paperwork showing what they've done for the people? I'm a people's representative, and as a people's representative, in the 12 years, I've never seen this. I've been in several boards, and I took and directed people towards help. I even took out of my own pocket for people to take and have help. But yet, does this be passed? We had a great list here, and we had a gentleman who was giving you great ideas, as several citizens have done. They have took and brought to you that facts that need to be hemmed, but yet has been denied. Kick the can down the road, as has been stated. And this is what is happening here today. Another can being kicked down the road. No, Ms. Santos has took and brought up issues. Mrs. Walker has brought up issues. The commission has brought up issues, but yet there was no confirmation done and therefore
Thank
we
you,
need
Mr.
to
Shepherd.
act upon.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, do we have anybody else that wishes to speak? Larry, I'm going to check back with you one last time.
No, sir. No more calls.
Okay, very good. Then we'll close public comment for this discussion and move back to the commission. Commissioner Saka.
And thank you all for coming and sitting through this and sharing with us. I do want to make one correction. I don't think 7 million is too much. If it were up to me, like all 32 million, which is good at nonprofits, because you guys can do the work far better than we can ever hope to. What I'm opposed to is today allocating 7 million. When I say I'm more comfortable allocating 4, that means in the future we can allocate more funds as we discuss, the clinic, the grocery, the mobility hub, all these other projects that could have GCRA funding. As we discuss projects that could have money come in from the home funds, we can always add to the 4 million. My fear is, I know we're going to use 7 million if we give you 7 million, but I wonder if it's not more prudent to start with something like 4 and then add to it as we decide these other not as urgent, or that would take a year to build out anyway, projects. So I just wanted to clarify that. It's not the total, it is the timing of that total that makes me hesitate. And I would be more than willing to add on later, just as of today, because we are still very tenuous at best on the rest of the list. I don't want to decide that severe a chunk without having even talked about anything else on this list in any great detail. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Wanted to address 2 points that a couple folks brought up. Excuse me. Particularly the language access. I am more than happy to ask our staff to take another swing at that, looking at the justification that the proposal from Milwaukee and the actual item from Boston, how they were able to fit that in. It is very important, and if we can put a line item in there, then I fully support that. If it's embedding it into the requirements for how the each individual organization or initiative is deployed, then that, that to me is non-negotiable. Like that needs to be included no matter what. And then if we can create a separate line item to do the actual infrastructure work we need to do within our organization, then fantastic. So I would like if the maker and seconder would consider adding that. I also am fully supportive of the funding for navigators, and I'm glad you are here to remind us of that. I'm thankful to the county for dedicating funding for the expanded hours of the health department. And I know that over a 2-year period, and I don't know what that number is, I think that's something we need to ask our staff to work with y'all on to bring something back to the commission. But I will tell you, I would support what would reasonably help us accomplish that goal over the next 2 years, just getting as many people signed up through the marketplaces as possible. I think that's completely justifiable use of the money, and could help a lot of people. So I'd like to consider that. Now, as always, one of the real drawbacks of sitting in the middle chair is you don't get to make a motion. It's not that I don't support the elements in this motion. It's everything that is not in the motion. I don't know, maybe it's my short time left or my old age, but I have an absolute sense of urgency. And I don't want there to be no direction to our staff and then us meet at some future meeting without anything in front of us. And so whether or not the maker and the seconder of the motion would agree to direct our staff to start putting together an implementation plan for these priorities. And I think, Commissioner Ariola, you asked where this list came from. we directed staff to bring us back. That's what Mr. Folston and the city manager's office have been working on since that last meeting. And they've been taking all that community engagement and input, and this is what came back. Now, if any of us or the majority of us don't want to do something on this list, that's fine. We need to have that discussion. We need to take a vote. If there's something not on this list, like the healthcare navigators and the language access, that we want them to add and consider, then we need to make that clear. I will tell you there's nothing on this list that I do not think is important and adds significant value to our community. So I want us to direct our staff to start doing the work to show us what does a gun violence reduction initiative look like. What is that, and how are those dollars being spent? What does the community land trust look like in providing more access to housing? What does the vaccine incentive program look like? I know there's been lots of vaccine incentive programs out there that haven't necessarily been very successful. And so I would love to learn more about those, but if we don't give them direction to do that today, they're not going to do any of that work, and then we're going to be back here in 4 weeks or 6 weeks or however soon we can get the meeting scheduled, and be that much further behind and that much further removed from helping the folks that are most vulnerable and have been struggling for the longest. And so if that does not get included to the motion, I would just hope that there's a follow-up motion that would direct our staff to do that and just allow all of us and the rest of our community to have a better understanding of how these programs would be executed and how they fit within the priorities of both the city and the American Rescue Plan. I just don't want to wait or delay any longer to do that. So with that, I'll go to Commissioner Ariola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there are some elements that you mentioned that I would be comfortable adding, but I disagree with the notion that the City Commission gave direction to allocate all $32 million. I do not remember giving that direction. I understand that we asked for them to put together the ideas that we were sort of in agreement with, but I don't recall there being direction for all 32 to be set aside in the pots. I am okay with adding additional direction for implementation plans and some of the other elements that you added. But there are a lot of proposals, both from the community and from this commission, that have not even been given the barest minimum of time to discuss. So I guess we are just thinking differently about time. I don't see this as slow walking. I see this as a deliberative process that the American Rescue Plan took time to create. It's going to take us time to allocate. And so I am certainly not trying to delay. I'm simply trying to deliberate. If this motion doesn't go through, I don't know what motion would come next. I think I can sort of take a guess, and I would probably oppose us approving this whole $32 million. And since we're down a member, it's just going to be 3-3 the whole way, unless I'm wrong in reading the votes, and that's okay too. I've been wrong before. And that would, I think, be just as bad. So let's see where this goes. Were there elements that you wanted to add besides the whole bit?
Well, no, because there's nothing on this list that I don't think is important and a priority. I don't know. Anyway, if anybody thinks that anything on that list is not important or a priority, I think they should say so and see if we want to back it out. Commissioner Santos?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. I won't be supporting the motion, but I will put forward a motion if this one does fail that hopefully I think can get us to 4 votes. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Sacco?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to confirm, the motion was the utility payments, 2.9 for eviction and housing stabilization, and $7 million for nonprofits, plus schedule a meeting to discuss the rest of the items.
Correct.
And
Okay.
for staff to return with
with detailed implementation for those that remain.
Okay, so I don't know, Seconder, did you agree to that modification of the motion? Okay, yeah, so that's been added, yes.
So the implementation of the remainder, the ones that are not nonprofits.
Correct.
Okay. I don't hate this motion, as I stated. I don't like front loading it, and if the amount were brought down, you'd have a fourth vote, or at least my vote. But at 7, I'm not comfortable at the moment. I'd rather that as we have those discussion about other projects and how to implement them, because as you said, maybe you don't like all of them. I don't like all of them. Not to say that I don't think they're important, but they're not necessarily with a limited amount of money what I would choose as the priority. But I do want to have that follow-up conversation on the ones that are not the nonprofit projects. And I'd be more than happy to support that motion, but that number would have to come down a bit. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And I'm just going to sort of jump in front of you, Commissioner Ward and Duncan Walker, but Mr. Folsom did ask us for just 2 things. I think that we've talked a lot about one of those 2, which is the amount. The second is the process for determining distribution, and we have not talked about that. I will say that one thing that I've suggested, and I think staff has verified that they're capable and willing to do this, is we ask our Citizen Advisory Committee for Community Development, who processes all the community development block grant requests and home requests, to do the same with this. Our nonprofits, many of our nonprofits are familiar with that process. Certainly the members are familiar with, analyzing the request, doing conversations or site visits. So it's something we already have in place that could, I think, handle that task. If we create something from scratch, again, it's just going to take a bunch more time. We're going to have to put people on it and get them trained and get staffing to support them. So, all that to say that we do need to give some direction to our staff as to how these nonprofits would, where they submit their request, how it gets scored or assessed, and then bring recommendations back to the commission. Sorry about that, y'all, but thought that was important to Mr. Folsom over there biting his nails, I think. Commissioner Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So a couple things. First of all, I do think that we need to give direction to staff for how to process the nonprofit applications resulting from today, whatever the number ends up being. I do hope that it's $7 million. I'm not as comfortable with the idea of farming it out to an existing group. It's going to end up being up to us anyway. I would prefer those completed applications come back to the commission directly, because we've had years when we completely rewrote the CDBG grants anyway, and I don't want to put a neighbor board through the process of working through all that just to tell them, no, this doesn't work for us. But that aside, that'll have to come on a separate motion, I think, but we do need to give direction. We absolutely do. I want to address something that came up in comments from 1 or 2 people. I don't, maybe I've just been in too many other bodies that had too much angst and difficulty, but I don't see what we've been doing up here today as a particularly difficult process. I'm not taking anything personally when projects of mine are taken in, taken out, or not. This is just part of the deliberative process of government. Whether it happens way down here at City Hall, or it happens in Tallahassee, or it happens in Washington, D.C., like it or not, this is the process. And we have to have these discussions about how to divvy up the money that comes before us, particularly in a process like this where we didn't create the number. We were just blessed with $34 million to help do good for people in this community. And that requires some discussion. And I think that's okay. It doesn't mean that we're angry with each other. I don't think. I'm certainly not. about how we distribute these funds. But we should absolutely have conversation about it. We shouldn't just say, oh, that looks good, and rubber stamp it and move on. So I felt like I needed to say that. This is just part of the process, and it's not a bad process. So thank you all for being a part of it. Thank you for being here with us, and I look forward to us getting some decisions here. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Duncan Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can also support the idea of completed applications coming back to the commission, but I want to kind of circle back to something that Commissioner Ariola made mention of with regards to the list. And I touched slightly upon this issue towards the beginning of this conversation. I made a submission at the very beginning of something that was a huge idea, because that's the kind of person I am. I dream big. It was for a medical plaza. I don't see that anywhere on the list. And the truth of the matter is, as time has evolved, as I have had more conversations with providers in the community, as I've been approached by them, as I've thought more about the need and had the opportunity to kind of soak a lot of things in, that idea has evolved in my mind. Also, as I considered the amazing ideas that you all have submitted as well. But I must say that the fact that that idea was omitted from this list is problematic to me. It is an issue that is a long-standing issue. It deals directly with healthcare disparities, particularly in East Gainesville, and it addresses something that we have heard a number of people, both at the joint county and city meeting several weeks ago and today, address. And that needs to be on this list, because no one, explained to me that it would not be, or helped me to understand why it wouldn't have been, particularly if it made it through the equity plan toolkit with the rating that it got. And so I can support the motion that is currently on the floor, but that has to be on this list. We've had people to stand up at the dais today and speak directly to that. Once again, going back to the idea, modifying it, even reducing the amount, because I will admit that the amount that was requested was a considerable amount. I would be more than happy to reconsider the amount. However, it is the issue. Right now, the only thing that we're dealing with in terms of healthcare in East Gainesville is something that doesn't even put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound that has existed for generations. And to me, we have an opportunity right now, a limited portion of funds, to begin to address it. The most beautiful thing about it is we also have partners who are willing to bring their resources. I have also been in conversation with our colleagues across the street about expanding these healthcare options in East Gainesville, and I have been thrilled about their response thus far. I'd like to know, number one, why that item was not included in the list, and I'd like for that item to be added. Can you speak to that, please?
I can just speak to it from my perspective. So the item, if I recall, was a $15 million medical campus, but did not talk about any operational ability, where the funds would come from to operate it, who the partners, specific partners were, or any other commitments. So a specific allocation that was going to take 50% roughly of the allocation when compared to the other needs, and the commission's already directive to work with UF on their facility led to it not being on the list.
Okay, I'll say this, two completely different concepts. I'll also say that in that proposal, I very clearly stated that it was a public-private concept. It was also an idea. And so for me, part of the thing that I think we've stated several times today that has been missing from this process has been the opportunity for open dialogue. This is a new process. And perhaps some of you on this dais have done things like this before. it was incredibly exciting, nerve-wracking, harrowing experience for me as someone who is obligated to my constituents and the neighbors in Gainesville to do something meaningful and impactful with this money. So what I would have expected would have been to get that feedback from you, not just to have my item simply not included, particularly when it addresses a very specific need and a disparity and an issue of equity.
So if I could just add, I'm sorry for interrupting, but just remind the commission, this process was taken away from my office. It was housed in another charter's office, and I was only one of 6 participants in providing or creating this list. So the decision wasn't mine. It was collective among the charters, and it was housed outside of my office. So at that point, I was just a single participant.
I thank you for sharing that, Mr. Feldman. Unfortunately, that's not what I was told. I'm not going to get into the weeds about that, because the larger issue is that that's a very important item. It was excluded from the list. I'd like it included back on the list. I wonder if anybody will modify a motion to include this. We're coming back to have a greater conversation about this, obviously. We have a lot of things that we have to discuss here, but that is a very sore spot for me. It is something that needs to be addressed. And since the submission of these items, either through the equity toolkit and up to this particular point, I've been in contact with numerous people who have reached out to me, healthcare providers who are not just offering services, but who are offering space. And so the idea of being able to re-envision this, like I said, come down on, this allotment, the idea of bringing in the people to actually work through what this could be, exists. And it is disappointing to me to know that I feel like I didn't get the opportunity to fully develop that idea to the point that it would make this list. Healthcare expansion in East Gainesville, beyond an urgent care clinic, needs to be added to this list.
Does the maker of the motion and the seconder wish to add this to the list that staff will bring back to analyze at our next, and discuss at our next meeting?
Mr. Mayor, the larger point, I would be okay with that. The larger point is that is not the only project that was not included on this list. And that's why I want us to schedule a special meeting so we can have that deliberation amongst ourselves and develop these ideas amongst ourselves. So I'm okay with adding it, but I could.
Okay, well, commissioners can bring up anything that they haven't discussed at that meeting, and so we can add this, and I think the commissioners probably owe it to their colleagues to share whatever backup material and analysis that they've done for those items, and make sure that it's in the backup for that meeting so we can be prepared to discuss it intelligently.
Completely agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I was told to prepare for this meeting to discuss the 2 items, the nonprofit allocation and you're right, we can bring these up at our will, but it just seems to me as though there is some very clear differences of understanding for where we are in this process and where certain proposals are and how it got to be the main slideshow of the entire discussion. And I think that's so I don't just, forgive me, Commissioner, I don't just want to add one project, because that was the purpose of the scheduling the special meeting, was to discuss all of our projects. So I don't just want to cherry pick right now.
Okay, I understand. Commissioner Sacco.
As to the process, I don't want it to just be us analyzing, because we are not experts by any means. I think we proved that when we had the first equity toolkit packet. but I don't want to farm it out completely to someone else because, as Commissioner Ward said, we ultimately end up picking. So what I would prefer to see is something similar to what Mr. Marvell did with the interim manager position, where his office filtered out the just not entirely qualified portions, and they left us with a still sizable list to pick from. If EO could do that in their assessment, just look through folks with experience or folks with, it's not me saying, yeah, I could put together a project, and it's a well put together, responsible proposal, then we can pick from those once they've been vetted for, I guess, not necessarily feasibility, but this is a pie in the sky kind of proposal, or could it be done? And I don't know if Mr. Folsom has any comments towards that approach.
Go ahead.
So, Mayor, two things I hear, and I could be wrong, so please forgive me. One is commissioner items that you guys are passionate about individually, having that discussion. And then as far as the nonprofits, having an application process that makes sure that when we bring those applicants back, they have met minimum qualifications and criteria. I agree with that. So depending on your motion here today, we can bring back an application that the nonprofits can apply through, and it would be able to weed out, if you will, those nonprofits that do not fit the criteria that we need for this pot of money. As we've said earlier, though, we want to make sure that we go out of our way, though, to have engagement with those nonprofits, because we want to give every nonprofit an opportunity to be able to apply. So we will spend time, if it takes that, with nonprofits, making sure they understand the criteria that we'll bring back with you. So I agree with that, and we'll do that part of it. Second part of it, if I'm hearing what I think the discussion is, are we saying that we want staff to come back and assist us with commissioner projects? I want to make sure I'm hearing that, because that may not be what I heard. I may be misspoken.
So the first point, first of all, let's just, is that process okay with the maker and the seconder? Okay, so.
Commission.
Yeah. So Office of Equity Inclusion will develop an application. We'll take those, we'll engage with all the nonprofits to make sure they are knowledgeable and understand. Then they'll sort of bring that back to us for at a decision point. The second part, Mr. Folston, I believe is the responsibility of the individual commissioners. If there is something that they want specifically discussed at that next meeting, and they need staff support to gather some information or get some clarifications, that they need to reach out to the charter officers and make that request, so that they are able to get that information prepared and in backup. I don't want to be coming to that meeting and not know anything about a project or a proposal. So we'll leave that up to the individual commissioners to engage with y'all to get that ready. Okay. And so I just want to make sure, do you if this were now to pass, do you have what you need that you requested at the beginning, which is a funding amount and a process by which we analyze the nonprofit applications?
Yes and no.
What do you still need?
If I think the motion is on what I think it is, to put $7 million into the nonprofit bucket, we need to talk about, well, you guys need to discuss, where do you want the $5 million that'll be additional dollars that get spent in the nonprofit? Where would you want that to go? Because if you want staff to come back with analysis, if I heard that still correctly on these items, they're gonna need to know which item is now $1 million shorter in terms of what they can do for those dollars. So I'll give a great example. So if energy rehabilitation is cut by $5 million and that program is left with $1 million, the impact of what that program could do is going to be drastically different. So I just want to make sure staff is aware of that before we come back to you.
Yeah, so I don't think we're there yet.
Okay.
And I don't think we'll be there until after that next meeting, when the commission discusses everything but what what the motion directs money towards. And once we have that discussion, we'll we'll need to give you direction on what we spend the money on and what the limits are. Yeah, so we're just not ready to do that today.
Okay.
Based on this motion.
That's correct.
Okay.
All right, so that means we are not making a nonprofit allocation then today.
No, we are. So here's the motion. If it passes. So we already have an outstanding $250,000 for utility assistance, so
Yes.
that doesn't change. $2.9 million for eviction assistance and housing rehabilitation, energy efficiency, and then $7 million for nonprofits.
Okay.
That's what's in the motion. Everything else is yet to be determined, and hopefully by the end of that next meeting, we will have more clarity on that.
Okay. So I see we're going to get the $5 million from energy rehabilitation.
For now.
Okay,
We're
for now.
authorizing $2.9 million for eviction and rehabilitation today.
Okay.
If the motion passes. That's what's in the motion. And real quickly, is there a willingness to have staff take another look at the language access piece? Just to bring that back to us. And we'll talk about the navigators concept at that next meeting as well. All right. So if you can give us some information on what that means, how many people, you know, what the cost, that sort of thing. Okay. Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to, I want to remind everyone that we have another 1.9 something million in addition. So we're not talking about looking for an additional 5 million for nonprofits. We're talking about looking for an additional 3 million, which is substantial. I mean, that's a big deal. I look forward to nailing down specifics on a variety of these, but I do think it's important to know what we're willing to get in the nonprofit bucket so that the nonprofits can get a form completed and come back to us and we can get that money flowing. We're not prepared for money to flow for a lot of these categories. We're just not. If we said, here's 9.6 million or 7.6 million or whatever the number is or might be for broadband today, we're not in a position to write that check today. So that's the case for many of these items. For some of them, we're absolutely in a position to move forward, and we'll get it as soon as we can. But what's important to me right now is that we walk out knowing how big the bucket is for nonprofits and what the procedure is going to be, or giving you an opportunity to tell us what the procedure is going to be for those nonprofits so that they can start helping people as quickly as possible. That's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. For the nonprofits and how they come back to us, I strongly suggest that we have some kind of recommendations that come back to the commission. If it's just here are all the ones that make the minimums, it's going to be, I don't know, I think having some kind of either CBDG or staff or someone, but having some kind of recommendations. If we don't have that, I don't think it will work that well when we try to figure it out. If this is bad, that will be way worse. And the other aspect when working on those, the nonprofit applications and stuff like that, and kind of the minimum qualifications. While our current city manager won't be the one who, our interim city manager, our next Ms. Curry, will be the one who has to sign off to make sure that these meet the requirements. So we need to make sure the city manager is involved in this, because the city manager is going to have to be the one who signs and is legally liable to the federal government as well. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And I know Ms. Curry is following along and will be prepared for that as well. Yeah, I think as far as recommendations, first and foremost, it's going to just have to be determined to be an eligible use, that it fits into one of the four main areas of the ARP, and below that, the specific elements that the Treasury defined. And then I think overlaying it with our strategic plan. That's the direction that this commission has given our staff to focus our resources on. So, I think making mention of that, which I think has been the case, and most of our items like as they come before us. So I think it's consistent with our current practice.
Yes, sir. And Mr. Mayor, to go to Commissioner Hayes Santos' point, it would be my, I agree that when the maker of the motion makes this motion, that they include the city manager in this process, he and his staff, as we work through this process together. He's been helpful to me during this time, and I appreciate that, and I definitely want to continue that relationship. That way that once Ms. Curry comes on, he, her, and I can have conversations around it too. So I would ask that the maker of the motion add that as well.
Well, I don't think that needs to be added to the motion. We need all of our charters involved.
Yeah, we already
Yeah,
did that.
and,
We already
and
did that.
I mean, legal is gonna have to be involved to make sure that we're complying with the legislation and all that. So, yeah, we'll make sure that, especially in the transition period, Ms. Curry's brought in for all those discussions as well.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we are gonna move to a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? No. That motion passes 4-2 with Hayes Santos and Sacco in dissent. Appreciate y'all being with us today for this conversation, and we'll work with you on the next steps, as well as letting everybody know when that next meeting is, when we're going to discuss some of these other things. We'll get to member comment. Is it on this? Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So when staff is coming back, are we giving any parameters on the dollar amounts? Because if we don't give any parameters on dollar amounts for all of these different things, how they're implemented is completely different. Was that direction given at all or no?
Not the dollar amounts. I can tell you there's just not going to be a majority today that's ready to commit to any dollar amounts. I think it's more about how do we operationalize some of these things. So what does gun violence prevention mean? What is a community land trust? How would they spend that money? Broadband, you all have been working on that committee for a long time. I think that there's, so anyway, I understand if there's a more specific dollar amount that they could get more detailed about how it would be implemented,
No,
but
for all other programs.
that's not the direction today.
All right, we're just gonna
I understand
never actually do anything.
I understand your frustration. I think that our next meeting will be really critical to giving more specific direction. Okay, with that, we are going to move to general public comment. This is for anybody that wants to speak to things that were not on our agenda today. Good.
Veronica Robledo again. I just wanted to make sure that, to acknowledge Commissioner Duncan Walker and her work and her proposal that was not on the list, in addition to Commissioner Ariola's comments, that hopefully at that next meeting there can be a little bit more transparency as to the process of what is then presented as the list. I hear that Mayor suggested that the commissioners put the backup material, but it seems like, as with this whole process, it's been a little wishy-washy as far as the process. So I hope that at that next meeting that all the proposals put forth that fall under the priorities of addressing issues that we're seeing with COVID will be discussed and none will be left out. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry, do you have anybody for general public comment?
Mayor Nathan Scott. Nathan?
Sir, that's not her choice.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Go ahead, Larry. I'm sorry.
Nathan Scott. Go ahead, Nathan.
Yes, thank you, Larry. Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. Nathan Scott. So, again, it's kind of sad to watch this. I mean, there's a point between deliberating and there's a point between dysfunction, and it seems to be more dysfunction by too many different people and having different ideas. You guys say one thing, but when it comes time to allocating money, it's a whole different set of ideas departing from the playbook. Again, I would just ask this commission what you could do to solve your affordable housing crisis, a crisis of your own making, by the way, because you failed to solve this problem before it became a crisis in 2 decades of mismanagement by one political faction that's been controlling the city. You had $32 million. How many affordable housing units, self-supporting, you build with that money, as opposed to squandering a third of it on broadband? Okay, what's more important, housing people, keeping them in housing, or giving them, shelter versus a luxury in life? And again, you have libraries, you have Cox Cable providing internet service, you have AT&T, you have Lifeline program that provides cell and internet And, you know, Florida pays the most into that Lifeline program, but gets the least benefit out of any of the 50 states. So, again, you guys can continue to make ill-advised decisions. One thing that I forgot to mention before that I will mention now is another caller, I think it was Ms. Silva, hit the nail on the head. Why are we using federal money to fund UF as opposed to UF funding something and doing something for this community in terms of the East Side Urgent Care Center? Yes, it's needed, but the question remains, commissioners, when's UF going to step up and start doing the right thing for our community? They've got the money to fund cute little UF Health headbands on the top of the coaches on the sideline of the football games on Saturday that y'all like to go to in the president's box, but they don't seem to have the money to put down to build a building and give something back to the community that they profit off of. It's a profit center. We're building a building for them to make a profit. Because certainly they're not giving away health care for free. If you got insurance, they're charging that. If you've got Medicaid, they're charging that. And if not, they're looking for money from the federal and state government. So come on, commissioners. You know, you guys need to put the foot down and start, again, this is once in a generational, once in a lifetime opportunity of $32, $34 million, whatever you guys are getting, and you're squandering it away. You can't even agree on how to squander it. It's really sad to watch that in play, and I hope when you come back there'll be some substantive discussion, because picking winners and losers of who gets free broadband when you've already got providers providing low-income families with broadband, it just doesn't seem to be a good use of limited resources.
Thank you, Mr.
Not
Scott.
that it's not well intended.
Appreciate it.
Not that it's
All right,
admirable.
next speaker,
but
please.
Look at how many.
Good.
Thank you. Greg Larbenz, one more time. I just have to say, it was amazing the dysfunction on display today. Commissioner Ariola, you began early in your discussion by saying we don't need to put the money in buckets today. But then we went to the $7 million in that one bucket without anyone expressing an urgent need to have that done today. $1 million might hand us over for a year. If we could have just simply stuck to the number that was in the budget proposal that you so nicely put together, we probably could have moved on and actually made some other decisions that would have been very useful. But as it was, we spent 2 hours going back and forth about this $7 million when we could have probably just said, hey, here's $1 million, take it now, we'll talk about the rest later. But yes, we wasted 3 hours of everybody's time. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry, do you have anybody else?
Yeah, two more callers, Mayor. Armando Gomez. Armando.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, the one thing I wanted to comment on was something I believe Commissioner Duncan Walker brought up earlier, is with respect to the healthcare facility. I didn't realize Commissioner Duncan Walker presented a $15 million facility or medical plaza, which is, that's new. That's an interesting, innovative idea. The one thing that I'm concerned about is during the joint meeting, one of your colleagues, I believe it was Commissioner Ariola, seemed pressed to want to give and it was interested in the $5 to $7 million that was going to be offered, or whatever the amount was, to give to UF for an urgent clinic, an urgent care clinic that was only open till 7 p.m. And I guess if we look throughout, and it was good that the county commission looked at this for what it was, that if we look throughout our city, certain sides of our city can get standalone emergency clinics that are open 24 hours, and we're going to spend $7 million on a clinic that closes open 7 to 7. What sense does that make? Make it it's the the haves and have-nots and we're also paying for the building, and it's not like we own the land. So once again, we're not getting the U.S. best; we're getting their backside. So I don't know where Commissioner Duncan Walker is with regards to other providers or other healthcare providers coming in, but I think it's interesting that we need to have an open dialogue that is meaningful and effective, other than just what we've been seeing. And that joint county commission meeting that we had, it was in full effect, and you had other leaders saying the same thing about other providers, and some of you seem so stuck on just the University of Florida providing an urgent care clinic as if that's going to meet the needs, when we know that it's not. And so I don't know, again, where our commissioner, our representative for District 1 stands at, but I remain hopeful and pleased that she's at least pushing back. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry, next.
Mayor, we do have a couple of folks that joined while he was speaking. Right now, I've got Telford Cartwright. Telford.
Yes, Telford Cartwright. Well, let me once again repeat my quote that I have written down. Use the poor to extract money from the rich and give to themselves. Socialist elite / socialist Democrats. Vote no for Democrats. Now, currently, the University of Florida is in the process of building building dorms on campus at the University of Florida for honor students in the amount of $250 million. As well as the University of Florida is in the process of building a new school of music slightly off campus at the intersection of 13th and University Avenue in the amount of $55 million. When they already have an existing school of music on campus. So, as far as I'm concerned, the University of Florida is the big house on this plantation, and the city commission, especially Mr. Poe, continues to shine shoes or rub the back of the gator, so to speak. Now, the eastern portion of Gainesville, Florida, often referred to as East Gainesville, out east, as far as I'm concerned, the whole economy in the eastern portion of the city is a religious / narco religious economy. Now, let's be truthful about the matter, and this is by design. And yes, there's been a gaping wound for generations on the eastern portion of the city, and we all know this. We had a small hospital which was known as, or was known by, or was called Lateral General Hospital, and yet it was shut down. It was closer to the eastern portion of the city as well as the county to service the needs, the healthcare needs of the people residing in the eastern portion of Gainesville, Florida, as well as in the eastern portion of the county. But not just the people living in the eastern portion of the city and the eastern portion of the county. Now, here we go again. Commissioner Walker presents a grand idea for a medical plaza, and who would know what that means? Now, I see here there's an attempt to subvert or Commissioner Walker's grand ideal, and I'm watching this city commission meeting very closely here. And back to my question I attempted to ask Mr. Poe, how can you ever help the working poor to help themselves by agreeing to build or enter into a contract to finance the largest biomass plant in the whole entire United States and giving us the highest utility rates in the whole state of Florida? I pay almost $500 a month, and I know that money goes to the daily operational duties.
Thank you, Mr. Cartwright.
Fiduciary
Appreciate your
duties.
comment. Next caller, Larry.
2 callers remaining, Mayor. Meg Tollison is next. Meg?
Yes, hi, thank you. Meg Tolosin, Board President of Working Food, and I appreciate the so much of the discussion around the nonprofit allocations and next steps. And my only concern that I just wanted to mention was around the motion is some sort of timeline. I understand a lot of it today was the balance between urgency and transparency. I just hope that there will be a timeline from the Office of Equity and Inclusion that will be as quick as possible while still balancing all the transparency and fairness and equity goals. What we heard from nonprofits today of our local nonprofits is definitely a sense of readiness to respond to whatever application process is developed. So I hope that can happen in an efficient manner. Thank you very much.
Darlene Buffalo. Darlene?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
Commissioners, thank you for allowing me to speak here. I have been watching your meeting, and I just have 2 short questions. What are the guidelines? I know there were guidelines at one point for nonprofits on what they can get, and I don't know if they've been updated or not. That would be a question I would have. And number 2, the other thing is the gentleman that is in the audience, the gentleman with the shirt on, the blue shirt, I think it was, I agree with him 1,000%. This has just been unbelievable waste of 3 hours. I didn't see much being done. unfortunately. And I think workshops and things like that with this amount of money is extremely important for the citizens of the city of Gainesville, but really also Alachua County. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Bye.
Thank you.
We have, Mayor.
That's that, Larry?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate everybody sharing their thoughts. Is there any member comment?
I just wanted to clarify that in the motion, there was instruction for implementation plans for all of the items that we voted on for staff to work on and bring back. So that was in the motion.
Yeah, as well as for the process for nonprofits to apply. Okay, thank you all very much. I know this is difficult work, but there's worse tasks than figuring out how to help our community with $32 million from the federal government. So happy to do it with y'all. With that, we are adjourned.